Karen yells at me in Walmart over apple juice and demands both bottles. My mother had to visit Walmart a few days ago to pick up a prescription and some food. She detests Walmart, hence we usually attempt to move quickly. My brother and I went to hunt the few things we needed as she stood in line for the prescription. We arrived at the grocery store and got to work shopping. There were just 2 gallons of apple juice left when we at last arrived at the beverages section. As I went to pick them, a woman walked up and watched me grab them. Turning back, I asked her whether she was likewise searching for apple juice. She agreed, thus I gave her one. We would take the other. Things started to get fast. She wanted them, hence she instructed me to give her both of them. I reminded her once more that I would give her one. We would retain the other. She started asking that I give her both as she wasn't satisfied with this. I told her no flat out. Since my brother only wanted apple juice and is not good with conflict, he was not saying anything. "Ma'am, do you want this one or not?" I asked. "Just give me both," Karen said. "How difficult should one find that to grasp? I want both of them." Looking nervous, my brother interrupted her as she was beginning to create a scene and said, "Look, we're just trying to be nice." Karen jerked back. "I don't care, just show me these, you are throwing away my time." I eventually grew bored with the debate and out of spite filled our cart with both of the apple juices. I spun around and pointed for my brother to follow. She started screaming, but we proceeded toward the front. Really, it was the dumbest thing ever. Arriving first, the OP and his brother might have readily snatched both apple juice bottles without saying anything. Rather, they volunteered to give the woman one, and she turned straight forward and started screaming at them. She ended up obtaining 100% of nothing while wanting exactly 100% of the apple juice. Though it sounds like they were able to just walk away without any more problems, I find it surprising that Karen did not end up running after OP and his brother to do something further. Tell me what you would score this one, 1 out of 10, down here for the entitlement degree. An entitled parent seeks Disney World's college refund policy. Understanding the rest of the story depends on knowing all this material. Having only been here slightly over 2 months, I work at a financial aid office for a small private university. Because I have to learn topics about the financial aid application process I never would have believed I would need to know, including how FAFSA forms are handled, my work is difficult. Students must complete the FAFSA, a crucial document to find out how much money they are qualified for to pay for college. Many times, this means students with scholarships, grants, or loans could receive a return check. The amount the student qualifies for and the amount the school deducts for tuition, classes, lodging, board, and other expenditures will determine how these checks turn out. Students occasionally will obtain thousands of dollars back off. Be sure not to discuss how you intend to utilize a refund outside of class criteria for anyone who intends to obtain one, since it is policy to refuse to distribute money if they are knowingly used for items outside of school necessities. Once more, this helps one to grasp the narrative. Now, on to the narrative. Though I work as a simple office assistant, my position as a financial aid assistant is one of knowledge of a financial aid counselor. Yesterday, a young woman and her father entered the office. "Where's the person that's holding my kid's money hostage?" the man asked before I could welcome them. This man was plainly angry and bigger than me, so I got scared. Just from the intensity of his voice, I wanted to cry. "Sir, I can see if anyone's available to talk," I said, and he started yelling at me about how horrible the university was and how dare they keep his daughter's money like this. We are all women in our little office with my boss, the Director of Financial Aid, DFA, Assistant Director AD, and Student Assistant. Turning to the open doorway, I found the Assistant Director looking unconcerned. "I can discuss her money with you and your daughter," she replied. Side note, since we have no control on how it's distributed, first call the billing department, not the financial aid office, if you're seeking a refund. I heard everything discussed since the entitled dad and the girl entered the office left the door open. Had I been let to document events, for privacy concerns I wasn't, I would have noted this conversation. "So how can I help you?" the assistant director asked. "What is happening?" The entitled dad added, "The refund for my kid was meant to arrive by the end of the week, Wednesday here, and her account does not show it." "Sir, please calm down," the assistant director said. Ignoring her, the dad said, "No, we utilize her money for our trip, hence she needs it." The daughter piped in, "Dad, I'm not going on a trip." The dad said, "You are indeed. Remember, we are heading to Disney World." Knowing this, the assistant director remarked, "So you're using your refund to pay for a trip outside of school?" Saying, "No, I'm not," the daughter objected. But the dad cut her off, declaring, "Yes, she is. We now need it since she pledged to pay the deposit with that money." "Sir, I must tell you that I cannot let this money be released as you have just told me your daughter will be using them for things outside of school. Please do not modify it." The dad said, "What? She can spend her money any way she wants and do anything with it." The assistant director clarified. "You only have this money for purchases connected to schools. Using it otherwise is regarded as fraud, a wrong use of money." OP explains here. You should never notify the financial aid office of your vacation plans and act like a jerk. You can utilize your return money any way you like. Most financial aid recipients have no particular interest in how you use your refund generally. I was still at my desk, trying to seem as though I was not hearing this, but this man went crazy. I swear I picked up more foul words from him in that one instant than I have in 27 years. Though she wouldn't be getting her money, the daughter was also unhappy. I dropped my head as they left the building. Not too long afterward, I got up to visit my assistant director. "Hey, are you okay?" I begged. She nodded, however she obviously needed some alone time. I don't blame her, that guy was really scary and I doubt we will hear from him very soon either. Man, if they hadn't obviously declared they would be using the money for Disneyland, it sounds like they could have really been able to help them. The fact that they intended to pay for the trip for everyone else using the daughter's money seems also strange. I sensed that the choice was made for her. Still, it was quite a poor decision for the dad to freely admit to utilizing the funds for Disneyland. Why would you even say it even if it wasn't against policy? Whichever the money is for, what difference counts? In this instance, it allowed the assistant director a simple way out from underhandling the matter entirely. Though the assistant director explicitly addressed it as a possibility, they believed the dad might keep returning but could also be terrified of anything involving fraud. That's really significant. Either way, grade this one, 1 out of 10, down below and tell me what you would do if you were in this position. Sister-in-law secretly DNA tested my adopted daughter and accused me of raising an affair baby, so I laughed in her face. Original post, August 29, 2024. When you weigh 30 have a daughter who's 6. I am not biologically related to her at all. There is no blood relation between us. I was friends with her mother for most of my childhood. We were never involved romantically and were always just friends. She had her daughter at 23 with her 25-year-old husband. When my daughter was a newborn, about 3 months technically, both her mother and father were killed. I won't go into too much detail for privacy reasons, but it was a workplace shooting. My friend and her husband had worked in the same building and were both killed. Both my friend and her husband had grown up with less than ideal families and didn't have any siblings, so there wasn't any next of kin for their daughter to go to. However, because I was close with them, I was able to adopt her. Even though I had been iffy about the idea of kids, I didn't want their daughter to grow up in foster care or around people who didn't have a connection to her bio parents, so I stepped in. My parents and siblings know that my daughter is not my actual daughter biologically speaking. My daughter, I'll call Lily for the post, also knows that she's adopted. I never really hid the fact that she was adopted. She knows her parents are dead and were killed by a bad man, but I'm saving the details for when she's older. Lily does not look like me at all. She looks exactly like her mother and biological dad. Most people assume that I'm her bio dad and that she just took after her mom. I don't ever really correct this when and if people assume this because it just seems unnecessary. My brother has been with his fiancée for about 2 years now. A few weeks ago we were all meeting up at my parents' house and my SIL saw an old picture of me, my friend and her husband. She pointed to my friend and asked who she was, and I explained that it was Lily's mother. SIL got quiet and stood in front of the picture for a while. I didn't think much of it. To clarify, she knows my friend died, but I guess didn't know that she had been married, or that Lily is not my bio daughter. I suppose she assumed my daughter was mine and my friend's biological daughter. My SIL got a DNA test done on my daughter behind my back. She used my brother's DNA for the test, and when it came back that they weren't related, she knew that meant me and Lily weren't related. She came up to me with the results and waved them in my face, saying that I was taking care of a dead woman's affair baby. She said this to me in front of my daughter. I just stared at her for a while before bursting out laughing at this. I told her I knew Lily wasn't my biological daughter, and that this thing called adoption exists. Her face went red and she stormed off. My brother is mad. I embarrassed his fiancée, but I said she embarrassed herself by DNA testing a kid that isn't hers and then parading the results up to me. What did she want me to do? What was her goal with this? Did she want me to break down and abandon my daughter? My brother said she thought she was doing the right thing and called me an asshole. I don't feel like the asshole, especially considering my SIL was the one who stuck her nose where it didn't belong. I'm asking for Reddit opinions, mostly just for validation. So was I the asshole? AITA has no consensus bot. OOP was NTA. Did the brother's fiancé assume OOP was married to the deceased friend? Oop, I can see how she assumed that we were together. In the picture I had my arm around her shoulders. This was before my friend was married to her husband. At the time that picture was taken they were just friends. Commenter, I think you're a hero. I'm proud of you. If anything ever happens to me I know my daughter will be so loved and cared for and raised in a loving household. I hope somehow your friend and Lily's daddy are resting peacefully knowing she's got a papa that loves her. I'm going back to cutting onions now. OP, I appreciate that, a lot. I'm doing my best to raise Lily with the values and beliefs her mother and bio dad had and wanted to raise her with, even if some of them differ a bit from my own. Does OOP know what kind of DNA test Sil took for his daughter? OOP, I believe they were doing one of those home DNA kits, though I don't know what company they did it through. Commenter, NTA, she wanted to stir some shit up, that's a hell of a lot of effort to help. Also I'd be pissed about how she got Lily's DNA to do this. It didn't go the way she thought it would so she got mad. Your brother is just trying to side with his soon-to-be wife. Update, August 31st, 2024. TLDR spoiler. My brother thought I had been having an affair with Lily's mom and thought I was Lily's bio dad. He tricked Sil into believing that I was in a relationship with Lily's mom and was Lily's bio dad. Sil then saw the picture of Lily's mom and her husband, and assumed Lily was an affair child between the two of them and was being led on to believe that I was Lily's bio dad. My Sil ended up coming to my house and apologizing, as well as telling me the full story. My brother put her up to the DNA test. When I first adopted Lily, my brother for some reason believed that Lily was my bio daughter. He thought that me and Lily's mom were together and just weren't telling anyone. He believes that when she got pregnant, Lily's mom told me that Lily was mine and that she was going to just say that it was her husband's, and I went along with it because I didn't really want kids. Sil was under the impression I believed I was Lily's bio dad. She saw the picture of Lily's mom and I, and after asking for clarification on who she was, assumed we were together in it, and then got suspicious when she saw that the other guy in the picture, Lily's actual bio dad, looked a lot like Lily. I also want to clarify, I didn't tell her that Lily's bio dad was in the picture because she had specifically pointed to Lily's mom, and I assumed she knew that Lily was adopted. I didn't know my brother had been telling her lies for nearly 2 years. She got the DNA test out of her own suspicions, and my brother helped her with it because he thought it would reveal that I was actually Lily's bio dad. He manipulated her into thinking that it would clear the air of suspicion, when really he was just trying to prove that I was really Lily's bio dad and lying about the reasons for adoption. Well, of course the results proved I wasn't Lily's bio dad and that my brother was wrong. My brother felt too embarrassed to confess to his fiancée that he had lied about the circumstances, which is why Sil confronted me with the results. My Sil also apologized for showing me the results in front of my daughter. She told me that her mom had an affair and cheated on her father, got pregnant with another man's kid, and had let her father believe the kid was his. Her father was devastated by this when he found out, and she grew very resentful of women who do that to their spouses. She had wanted to sit me down and talk to me about it without my daughter, but when she saw me with my daughter she got angry thinking I was being led on to believe I was raising my daughter when I was actually raising another man's kid, and she ended up exploding and immediately waved the results in my face. My Sil does feel very guilty, and she's angry at my brother for lying to her. I'm not angry at her for doing the test, because she thought she was doing the right thing. I also forgave her for the way she told me about the results, because clearly affairs are a sensitive subject for her and I can understand why she would have exploded like that. I'm pretty sure she plans to break up with my brother now, and I don't blame her. When I called and asked my brother about this, he admitted it. When I asked why he would think this, he said that he couldn't think of a reason why a man who had been against having kids at the time would willingly adopt a baby without having a blood connection to it. He told Sil that I was Lily's bio dad and was aware of the fact. He took it a step further, and said that me and Lily's mom were together at the time of Lily's conception. Both me and my parents have been in low contact with my brother for a while now. I know I will forgive my brother eventually, but I can't do that right now. He believed I was low enough to have an affair with a married woman, get her pregnant, take no responsibility, allow her to pass off the kid as another man's, and then only take responsibility because her mom died. Relevant comments. OOP on how Lily is handling all of those. Is she mad at her uncle and his fiancé? OOP. She was confused and I had to explain to her what Sil had said in terms she would understand. She was angry Sil would think that of her mom, and I had to explain that she had been lied to and didn't think that anymore. She's not mad at Sil anymore but doesn't want to ever talk to her uncle again. OOP on fatherhood since adopting Lily. OP, LOL, yes I can admit that I'm definitely a lot softer since becoming a father. Adopting my daughter made me have to finally be mature, something I wasn't in my 20s when I adopted her. Commenter, both your brother and Sil are getting off too lightly. He butted into your family and lied to his wife. And sensitive issue or not, she still violated your daughter's privacy, then called her an affair child derisively in front of her. Commenter. When I asked why he would think this, he said that he couldn't think of a reason why a man who had been against having kids at the time would willingly adopt a baby without having a blood connection to it. Your brother is really showing his whole ass here. Your brother was both a terrible sibling and partner. He riled up his fiancée based on her trauma in order to enlist her to help in deceiving you. Awful. OP, I really want to stress this point, take the words right out my mouth. I'm not mad at my sil because I know she was manipulated into doing this by my brother. I wish more people could understand that. Update 2. September 8, 2024. Update 2. SIL is now XSIL. I don't know if multiple updates are allowed for this sub. If not, take this down and I'll post to my profile. Some people were wondering what happened to my brother and Sil. Well, she dumped him. They tried to make it work, but that only lasted a few days and she ended up giving him the ring back. My brother got shit-faced drunk on my front lawn in the middle of the night. I was pissed because Lily had school the next morning and this woke her up. My brother was yelling insults to both me and my daughter. We called the police and he spent the night in jail for drunken disturbance. I believe the official charge was something like that. I sure as hell pressed charges because he was saying some borderline threatening statements to me and my daughter. I don't think it's enough to qualify for a restraining order, but if it is, I'll get a temporary one. On a more positive note, Lily is doing well. She's getting straight A's in even subjects and is excited about her first ever science project. She's been talking my ear off about it. Send help LOL. Comments. Commenter 1, good for you and your daughter. That was such a violation for you too. Unfortunately, the ex has to deal with her own personal demons. They are both sick. Commenter 2. It's unfortunate that your brother reacted so poorly to the breakup. It's great that you're prioritizing Lily's well-being and ensuring her safety. Hopefully your brother gets the help he needs to deal with his emotions in a healthier way. Dad gave our family business to my lazy brother. He messed up, almost causing a customer to die, and now Dad's begging me to come back and fix it. I, 28F, threw my dad a retirement party somewhat over a month ago. Having maintained our family restaurant for practically his whole life, he was retiring from management. Now, at about 62, he told us he was too exhausted to continue and wanted the company to be passed on to the next generation. Since I had given this restaurant the past 5 years of my life, I very mistakenly assumed he meant me. My family runs 2 other restaurants across the city in addition to an Italian franchise. My uncle runs one, the other is supervised by his daughter. But the most often used branch is ours, and my father is the official owner. For background, my uncle is not really the biological brother of Dad. This all began when my grandfather built his first restaurant, where business first started. Actually, our property is the original one. The restaurant my grandfather opened with my grandmother operated for numerous years until my father assumed control. Then he grew the company by adding 2 other eateries at separate sites. My uncle came in at that point. When we first launched the second restaurant, he left his employment and began working there. His daughter took charge of that place. Since the company has always stayed within the family, when Dad announced his retirement a few weeks before I hosted the celebration, I naturally anticipated him to turn it over to me. Since my uncle wanted to retire in a few years anyway and he is almost the same age as my father, maybe a few years younger, he was not a competitor for the firm. Given my 5-year dedication to the first restaurant, his daughter's 2 years of running the new store represent significantly less experience than I have. I abandoned my corporate job to work with my father ever since I was 23. I wanted to one day inherit the family firm and carry it to unprecedented success. Since I was the strongest applicant to inherit the company, I simply thought it would be me. My cousin was too young and unskilled to manage on her own. My uncle was retiring soon. I knew then it would be me. Though it was somewhat stupid of me not to demand a written agreement, my father never mentioned it straightforwardly. I assumed this was merely understood. Still, at the very last instant my father threw me a curveball. He said on the day of his retirement celebration that my bratty younger brother would be inheriting the company. I have a younger brother and an elder brother. Charles, 34M, my older brother, took the medical route. He is a surgeon and shows no enthusiasm for the restaurant industry. Derek, 26M, my younger brother, spends nothing at all and does nothing all day. Nobody in the family likes him, he is a brat of good value for nothing. Though I have no issue with his lack of talents or his lack of activity all day, I absolutely find his attitude unacceptable. Though he has nothing to show for his life, he behaves as though he is the best and deserves every nice thing that comes his way. Mostly, it's my parents pushing this behavior. Anytime Charles and I try to talk about it, They shut us down and tell us he needs positive support so he could investigate job paths and avoid lifetime freeloading dependent on his parents. A few years ago, he graduated from community college. Since then, he has been let go from at least 5 different companies. He has a major attitude issue, so he can never make things stick. Though I'm not sure why he believes this, he feels he is on the same level as God personally and that nobody else can challenge him. We have to put up with it since we are family, but in the actual world, least of all his employers, none would accept this kind of behavior. It is therefore not surprising that he has been let off from every position within a few months. He is not very talented in anything, and even the jobs he worked at were guaranteed by my father via his contacts. For himself, Derek truly cannot accomplish anything. He is simply a huge screw-up and has no idea about his future direction. Since he was let go from his last job 2 years ago, he has been lounging about our house, draining our parents for the past several years. The worst aspect is his lack of any guilt or regret over it. Our parents ignore him and let him live this way instead of intervening, which makes it quite annoying. It is unfair, particularly because Charles and myself were continuously urging us to improve. Not to seem unappreciative, as Charles and I are doing in our life, but it stinks to see them be so forgiving of Derek. Still, I find him to be a somewhat spoiled brat that absolutely bothers me. As children, we were all wonderful friends. But, since high school, things have changed and I hardly get along with Derek in the least. Everyone was rather surprised when my dad said Derek would be inheriting the company, as he also lacks knowledge of the company or any notion of how things run. A few months before I organized the celebration, my father had announced his retirement. Everyone knew about it. Family members as well as workers. Having been my father's right-hand man, or lady, in my case, I naturally anticipated to take over after he retired. I regret not having a decent discussion about it. I had taken it for granted, and perhaps that was the reason I came undone. I regarded this as evidence that he was intending to leave me in control, even though he had expressed things about what he wanted me to do once he retired a few times. I trusted my father, therefore I never thought of him maybe not leaving the company to me. He had never offered me a justification not to. Though he handled Derek differently, that did not mean he mistreated me. As an employee as well as a daughter, he was always incredibly caring and polite with me. Still, I decided to throw him a party when he announced his retirement. It never occurred to me that he hadn't revealed who his successor would be, since I simply knew it would be me. I was shocked on the day the party was scheduled when he chose to declare Derek would be taking charge. Not only me, everyone at the party, from my mother herself to all the staff, was in shock. Everyone had assumed I would inherit the company, particularly because I had spent 5 years working at the restaurant striving for perfection. Still, after all of my effort, Derek was scheduled to inherit. I found none of it logical. It didn't really dawn on me until my father brought Derek to his side and he smugly declared he embraced his new post. Tears and total devastation drove me literally from the restaurant. 2 minutes later, my father trailed me outdoors. He wants to clarify that he made this very tough choice for specific reasons. Though I was unhappy, I chose to give him some time. Still, his motives were equally illogical and foolish as his choice. He knew it. He informed me that Derek was really useless and that this affected his decision. Derek had been sitting at home for the past 2 years, while my father had been trying very hard to convince him to go out, hunt for a job, and engage in meaningful life activity. Derek took everything lightly. Now my father reasoned that perhaps placing Derek in a position requiring responsibility, such as running the restaurants, would compel him to rise up and improve his output. Derek's heart wasn't in it, according to my father, because he was working for someone else and lacked an interest in his former employment. However, my father thought Derek would have more of a stake and would be driven to be a better worker, since this would be his own business. And if not, at minimum, it would get him out of the home. Then my father informed me that he still wanted me at the restaurant to perform exactly what I used to do for Derek, to be always present for him. He informed me Derek would only be the nominal head. I would be the actual boss. This would, according to my father, inspire Derek to become well. To me, that was quite nasty. Knowing that I was quite capable of doing a far better job than Derek, he expected me to be his shadow and assistant always. I am my own person. I am not the babysitter for my brother. By then, I had worked hard enough to land the job my father had just given Derek. I was still rather offended and not changed even with the justification. I warned my dad he would lose me permanently, or he could undo his words and offer me the job he had just granted Derek. I meant it. I had an ultimatum to offer him. Regretfully, we then engaged in a somewhat nasty argument. He informed me I wasn't thinking about my brother's future and I was being selfish and irrational. By not considering mine, he was also acting selfishly, I told him. We found ourselves fighting in this way. Having nothing to say left, I cut him off after that. He refused to hand the job away from Derek to someone who rightly earned it, me. I made up my mind not to return to the restaurant after I felt so degraded. My last day spent there was the day following the retirement celebration. 1 month after that, I still haven't gone back to the restaurant. Though I don't ask about the business, I have stayed in contact with my mother and Charles. They know how things are going, but they also know it bothers me and I don't want to talk about it. I therefore had no idea how the restaurant was performing until a few days ago. Nothing had truly altered on that front as I stopped talking to my father following that argument and avoided Derek anyhow. After leaving the restaurant, I had also begun submitting applications for other employment. Like any other employee, I did get paid for my work there, and I have some money right now to cover temporary needs. I reasoned I could survive off of my funds till I discovered another activity I wanted to engage in. I had even intended to travel next week, but right now I'm not sure since I might have to return to the restaurant. The cause is, like I had anticipated, my brother messed up quite extensively. For some reason, my dad felt it would be a good idea to let him do anything he wanted, without supervision, to inspire confidence in him. He knew nothing about running a restaurant. Apparently, Derek's emotions came before the family business and other pragmatic issues. Derek had been cutting costs on components in addition to making a lot of careless and foolish financial mistakes from the beginning. Now, it's causing them major difficulties. We offer a separate vegan menu and accommodate vegans so that none of non-vegan items come into touch with vegan meals in the kitchen for ethical reasons. We also set aside space specifically for vegan cuisine cooking. But in his infinite wisdom, Derek closed that compartment to create room in the kitchen and began tampering vegan goods in order to save money. This would only be a matter of time before blowback occurred. 2 days ago, the unavoidable happened. Derek had told staff members to use conventional dairy milk wherever they could avoid using the more unsafe higher-priced soy milk. That moron overlooked the fact that some people are really allergic to dairy, not just vegan for fun. You might fairly predict what followed. A client ordered a milk-based dessert and expressly requested soy milk or another milk substitute to be used rather than ordinary dairy. Usually, one of our regular staff members would have used the alternative as asked and disregarded Derek's ludicrous orders. Regretfully, Derek had chosen a fresh, inexperienced man and given him rigorous instructions to document anyone in the kitchen defying his directions. Derek had discovered that the regular staff members were neglecting him since they were too quickly running out of substitute materials. He recruited this new guy as he wanted someone to spy for him. Sadly, this new employee ignored the customer's request and used conventional dairy milk for the dessert following Derek's directions exactly. He did a really poor job with it as well. Things went south rapidly, and the client experienced a strong allergic response. They now seem ready to sue the eatery. I know all of this since my dad contacted me in the evening a few days ago, the day the incident occurred, to let me know what happened. He looked to be panicking. He told me he had sacked Derek right away since he had no idea what Derek had been doing behind his back. He now asked me to return and rejoin him. He was presenting me with the job I had long sought. It was strange that my brother wanted me to come back now, having screwed up just as I had predicted. From the events of 1 month ago, I was still somewhat wounded and disturbed, hence on the phone I laughed heartily at their predicament. I informed him I never would be returning under any conditions. Just as he had embarrassed me at the retirement party, I said that should he truly want me to come back, I anticipated a public apology in front of the family and all the staff. Before handing me the job, I also wanted him to admit his errors and declare he had sacked Derek. Given what happened during the party, I do not believe I was asking for too much. My father's behaviors were just intolerable, and they had severely wounded me. Since now he was the one depending on me, I thought I was merely asking him to make things right. But my mother felt my requests were a bit excessive. During the phone call, even my father claimed he would not be doing any of it. The company was just as much mine as it was his, he informed me. He stated what I was asking of him was ridiculous and humiliating even though he acknowledged he might have made a mistake. So am I the asshole, Ida, for asking my father to publicly apologize if he wants me to rejoin the family company following the choice of my brother to inherit it over me? Update 1. Hi everyone who took the time to comment on my first post and provide suggestions and encouragement first. Thank you very much for your concern on this matter. It truly means a lot to me. Regarding what I decided to do, I gave it some thought over a few days and concluded I would be returning to the company. Though I had to set aside my pride, the decision wasn't simple as at the end of the day, I have spent 5 years of my life at that place. I want to be the one to drive the company ahead, hence nothing else can change that. Given that my dad won't be around permanently, I truly want to see it flourish rather than be closed down. As I have already said, Charles has no interest in the restaurant, and Derek obviously lacks the skills or ability to run a company of that kind. It thus has to be me. It merely does. My uncle and cousin, who oversee the other two branches, agreed I should return when I spoke with them. They think that the restaurant is properly mine, hence if my father is asking me to come back, I should put my past behind me and pursue what I love. To be honest, I would have preferred it if my father had publicly apologized, but I don't want to start a public celebration or gloat over Derek being right. That would not make me very happy as compared to the gratification the success of our restaurant will provide. I now understand I have to choose my battles and have opted to let this one pass for my own benefit. I chatted with Dad this morning. That was a highly civil and official exchange. Though we will talk about them eventually, we decided to temporarily keep our history apart for now. Right now, we provide the situation under current utmost attention. To negotiate and get a settlement, we have set up a meeting with our lawyers and the impacted consumer. Out of court, as she has been continuously tweeting about us on social media. She hasn't acquired much traction thus far, so we have been lucky. Nevertheless, this won't be the case for long, hence we must squish this before it becomes too huge. Update 2. After a lengthy period, yesterday I personally met my father. We met before our customers meeting, and one last time we spoke with our lawyer on everything. Seeing him after so long was odd since, 5 years ago, I had seen him practically daily. Until I actually saw him, I had no idea how much I missed him. Since our lawyer handled much of the conversation, we didn't interact much. We had to concentrate on that, but I could see there was still plenty we needed to talk about. Though later we will have to deal with everything, now was not the proper time. Neither has he brought up anything regarding the event from a month ago, nor has he adequately apologized to me. Still, between us things were friendly and civil, which was a comfort because this was our first in-person meeting following our major argument. Though I expected things to be strange, happily they were not. It had been some time, so my father requested me to come home to see my mum after the conference. Since the retirement party, I have not visited home. I had to turn down though, since I had a prior obligation, that of attending an evening engagement party for a buddy. Fascinatingly, when I questioned my dad whether Derek lived at home, he informed me he did not. I really wanted to know where Derek was living and how it came about, but my dad didn't provide any more information and made it plain he didn't want to talk about it. So I stopped there. Later on I spoke with Charles and he informed me that Derek had moved out a few days following his termination, but he was unsure whether our parents had requested him to leave or whether Derek went on his own. Though things remain unknown, I intend to discuss it with my dad and work out what is happening. The client's meeting turned out better than anticipated. Given the situation, I had thought it would be difficult. What transpired was a major ethical transgression and never would have happened if my father or I had been in charge. The consumer, however, was reasonable. She said that the reason she had threatened to sue and complain so much on social media was that the manager had insisted that she was at fault rather than owning the error. She had, he said, not mentioned her dairy allergy or asked for soy milk. The fact that she was blamed when she knew it was not her fault infuriated her the most. Once we knew the whole truth, we knew how much of a moron Derek had been. The client had refused to interact with us prior to this without her lawyer present. She had stated in her social media posts how the management of the restaurant treated her, but she had not gone into great detail since she feared defamation claims. She hadn't completely explained the matter because Derek had got in touch with her accusing her of lying and threatening to sue her. Until now, my dad and I had not known exactly what transpired. The waiter who ordered her sided with Derek since he feared losing his employment. I don't blame him, even if it means covering for their company. These folks need their jobs and are not ready to jeopardize them. Derek, the new guy he hired, never turned on him, hence he also insisted that the server had not been told about the soy milk, which resulted in the ordinary dairy milk being used. Then Derek and the new guy claimed the customer was trying to obtain money from us and lying to discredit the business. We told the client that Derek, the guy in charge, had been let go. So right now, we were running everything ourselves. Nothing like this will never ever happen again, we assured her. Fortunately, we reached an understanding. She agreed to remove her social media entries and let it go. Although we lost quite a lot of money in the process, at least we were able to tidy Derek's mess. My dad and I can at last relax. Update 3. Hi, I have never been happy. I returned to the restaurant a month ago. To be honest, it took me some time to see how unhappy I had been absent from the workplace. Though I have problems with my father, I love this place. I am going to soar to new heights as I wish. Regarding my father, we are working things out and have come quite far. Having spoken with my parents, we as a family have decided we should spend more time together. A few weeks back, after returning to the restaurant, I had a lengthy conversation with my dad. He and my mother said they handled Charles and me poorly. They wanted to develop Derek to a point where he could compete with us and not feel inadequate. They knew he was the weakest link among us. But they raised his ego to an irrational level in doing this. Now, Derek sees the world of himself without really trying to get better. The day my father dismissed him, Derek moved out and shut everyone off since his pride suffered. Later, my dad discovered Derek is working at a nearby video game store and living with a friend. At least he's trying to make it on his own and acting. It's good for him. Every weekend my family gathers for dinner, including Charles and his wife. Derek has been invited multiple times. It would be disrespectful not to, but he has not responded, as asked. It scarcely counts to me since I have nothing to do with him anymore. Though I would like him in my life, I wish him the best. For me, hanging around with my family has been fantastic. I adore it since my father and I are at last returning to a state of normality. Recently, life has been very wonderful. I have no complaints. At last I am creating something I believe in and doing what I love. I am back on good terms with my family and I do not think I could ask for more. All a person truly needs to be happy is that. My son tried to kick me out of my home to finance his dream house and start his own family. I am a 65M single parent having spent the past 32 years alone. Laura, my wife, died while our son Gary was just 3 years old. She got in an automobile accident on her way home from work, hence the loss was abrupt and terrible. We were a happy family of 3 one minute, then I was left to raise our small kid by myself. Early on those years were really demanding. At the time, I was a high school English teacher and suddenly I had to balance my employment with full-time parent duties. On evenings when I would sit on Gary's room's floor observing him sleep, I would wonder how I would handle it all. Still, we managed daily to make it work. Over the years, I gave up a great deal. Promotions that would have needed more travel or longer hours declined. Gary always came first, so I missed out on social events and dating possibilities. I never, however, objected to it. Gary was my universe. Seeing him develop into a content, healthy young man made all the difference. Things grew simpler in some respects and more difficult in others as Gary aged. While the emotional obstacles of parenting a child were more pronounced, the practical ones became lessened. Gary began to probe his mother more, and I tried to preserve her memory for him. Together, we would review picture albums and I would share anecdotes about her. Though it was complicated, I wanted him to know how much Mom had loved him. Gary and I had a wonderful connection in spite of the obstacles. We were great buddies, not only father and son. We both loved sports, especially baseball, and some of my best recollections are of Gary being taught to throw in our backyard. We used weekends for hiking or camping as he grew older. When Gary was admitted into a decent college, I felt really proud. Watching him pack for his dorm room was mixed, but I was happy for him to begin this next phase of his life. Over his college years, we kept in close proximity. I loved those talks as he would call me for guidance on everything from his studies to girl problems. Gary returned home after college in search of work. He ran across Jane during this period. She came from a rich background, was clever and attractive. Though at first I was glad Gary had discovered someone who brought him great delight, over time I began to see changes in his conduct. Always talking about the beautiful places Jane took him to or the costly gifts her parents bought, he grew increasingly preoccupied with worldly objects. Reminding myself that Gary was a mature man entitled to live his life any way he wanted, I tried not to let it disturb me. But the sensation that he was transforming into someone I didn't know persisted. Though I had reservations, I was glad for Gary and Jane when they declared they were getting married. Though Gary insisted Jane's parents were paying for everything, I volunteered to assist with wedding expenses. The wedding was an opulent event, considerably more grand than anything our family was accustomed to. Among Jane's friends and family, I felt awkward. Yet I put up a courageous front for Gary's benefit. Gary and Jane moved into a lovely property in an affluent area following the wedding. That was quite different from the little house Gary had grown up in. Occasionally I was asked there for supper, but in their contemporary house I always felt like an outsider. Jane was courteous but aloof, and I sensed she considered me as embarrassing. Gary disappeared from my view as the years passed. His high-powered career and new way of life occupied him. Our talks felt surface level. Although I missed my kid, I reminded myself that this was inevitable in raising a new family. Then around 6 months ago, I decided to do something that would fundamentally alter everything. I choose to call it quits on instruction. After 40 years in the classroom, I thought it was time. I was 65. Having extra free time excited me, maybe for vacation or a new hobby pickup. Gary's response when I informed him I wanted to retire startled me. He appeared worried rather than delighted for me. Inquiring about my financial condition, he wanted to know whether I had enough stored up. I reassured him that throughout the years I had been frugal with my money and had a reasonable pension. Though I wasn't wealthy by any means, I had enough to live reasonably. Gary advised me then to sell my house and live with Jane and him. The proposition immediately appealed to me. It seemed to me as evidence that Gary wanted to reconnect and have me play a more major role in his life once more. Then he began discussing the value of my house and how the sales proceeds would benefit us all. I liked my house. It was where Gary had grown up and where we had created many treasured memories. I never gave it any thought. I told Gary I was glad where I was, even though I appreciated the offer. Though he appeared let down, he avoided raising the matter. Gary began phoning more regularly over the next 2 weeks. Every time he would bring up my selling the house notion. He discussed how I might help them at home and how everyone would benefit from it. His tenacity began to irritate me. Then, about a month after I retired, Gary and Jane showed up at my place without warning. They claimed to want to discuss my housing circumstances. Jane spoke much of the time, outlining their intended family starting point and how great it would be to have me there to assist with the grandchildren. Her voice, though, seemed strange. She seemed to be pitching me something. It was obvious as the discussion progressed what they truly desired. Though they needed more money for the down payment, they were looking at a larger house in an even more upscale area. They reasoned that if I sold my house and lived with them, I could put the money toward their new house. I would have a room in their house in exchange and live among their family. Using the promise of family intimacy to gain my money, they seemed to be trying to control me. I told them straight out I had no intention of investing in theirs or selling my house. Gary was irate, but Jane remained calm and said they were simply trying to support me. I shook when they went. My kid, the small lad I had reared on my own, would try to pressure me in this way, and I couldn't believe it. Over the next few days, I considered our relationship and sought to identify when things had gone so wrong. 1 week later, Gary gave a call. This time his voice was different. He claimed they had no option but to handle things as I was not ready to be sensible. He told me the house I was living in belonged really to him. I remembered putting the house in both our names when Gary turned 18, even though I had bought it when he was a small boy. Never expecting he would turn it against me, I saw it as a means of ensuring his future. Gary claimed to be co-owner and intended to sell the house as he was entitled to do so. What I was hearing, my own kid was threatening to sell the roof over my head, wrangled me. Saying that this was my house, I objected and Gary said, "You're retired now, Dad. You simply are an old useless man. We have a future to consider, Jane and I." The next several weeks were a misery. Beginning to show real estate brokers, Gary and Jane insisted on offering house tours. They dismissed my objections, as though I were not even here. Watching strangers move through my own house, I felt like a ghost. I once listened in the kitchen as Jane spoke with Gary. She didn't know I was in the room next door. "We have to clear the useless old bones from here," she remarked. "I find it amazing that you let him freeload for so long." Gary's answer was just as nasty. "Don't worry, we will have him gone shortly. He has had his time, now it is ours." I collapsed. For now the son I had given everything saw me as nothing more than a burden. Lost and alone, I didn't know what to do going forward. That's where I find myself right now. My son and daughter-in-law are aggressively trying to sell my house out from under me. They have made it abundantly evident that they consider me as nothing more than a worthless old bone getting in the way of their ambitions. About my future, I'm frightened, angry and wounded. At 65, I never thought I would be in this situation facing possible homelessness from the avarice of my own child. How did my relationship with my son get here? Update 1. It's been a month since I last posted and I can't believe how much has transpired. The issue with Gary and Jane has only worsened, and I find myself in a position I never imagined conceivable. Following my initial post, I resolved to take action. I couldn't simply sit back and let Gary and Jane sell my house from beneath me. I contacted an old friend, Dean, who is a lawyer. I've known Dean since college, and he's always been there for me. When I explained the problem, he was outraged and offered to assist me pro gratis. Dean investigated the legal issues of my circumstance. It turns out that, while Gary's name appears on the deed, there are regulations that protect me as a long-term resident. Dean stated that Gary could not simply force me out or sell the house without my approval. This gave me a little sense of relief, but I knew the war wasn't done. I've decided to confront Gary and Jane. I asked them over for supper, expecting that in a quiet, familiar setting, we could have a logical conversation. I spent the entire day preparing Gary's favorite meal, pot roast with all the fixings. It was the same dish I made for his birthday every year as he grew up. When they arrived, we sat down to eat, and it felt nearly like old times. We exchanged casual conversation regarding work and weather. I finally decided it was time to confront the elephant in the room. I informed them about my conversation with Dean. I stated that what they were attempting to do was not only ethically reprehensible, but potentially unlawful. I hoped that the knowledge would cause them to reconsider their actions. Gary's reply did not meet my expectations. Instead of backing down, he became infuriated. He accused me of threatening him and attempting to influence him using legal jargon that I did not understand. Jane jumped in, stating I was selfish and jeopardizing their future. I tried to remain cool, explaining that I was not threatening anyone. I just wanted to keep my house, where I had raised Gary and where we had shared so many memories. However, my comments appeared to go unheard. After dinner, Gary and Jane stormed out, leaving me alone with a table full of half-eaten food. I spent the night reading through old photo albums, looking at images of Gary as he grew up. I couldn't connect the happy youngster in those images with the man attempting to take away my home. The next day, I received a letter from the law company that represents Gary and Jane. They were disputing my right to stay in the residence, saying that Gary, as co-owner, had the authority to sell. The letter was full of legal jargon that I didn't understand, but the message was clear: they were willing to take this to court. I quickly called Dean. He calmed me, but told me that court battles may be exhausting, both emotionally and financially. He warned me to be ready for a tough struggle. Over the next 3 weeks, my life was occupied by legal consultations and paperwork. Dean was quite helpful, explaining everything in language I could understand and guiding me through the process, but it was exhausting. I couldn't sleep because I was so scared about what was about to happen. During this time, I also began reaching out to old acquaintances and coworkers. I hadn't realized how secluded I'd been in recent years, focusing solely on Gary and his family. It was a relief to reconnect with individuals who knew me and recalled what a good parent I had been to Gary. One of these individuals, my former coworker Susan, promised to let me stay with her if things became really terrible. It was comforting to know I had somewhere to go if the worst happened, but the prospect of leaving my home shattered my heart. As the legal battle progressed, Gary and Jane's methods became increasingly aggressive. They began spreading stories across the neighborhood that I was mentally ill and needed to be placed in a care facility. Some neighbors I'd known for years began avoiding me, giving me weird stares as we passed on the street. Stress was having a toll on my health. I found myself always weary and lost my appetite. My doctor warned me about the consequences of stress at my age and recommended some sleep aids, but medications couldn't relieve the agony in my heart that accompanied every thought of Gary. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since my last update, and I had an unexpected visitor. It was Jane's mother, Elizabeth. I had only met her a few times at family gatherings, and we had never been close. She appeared embarrassed as she stood on my porch, but I politely invited her in. Over a cup of tea, Elizabeth explained why she had come. She had overheard Gary and Jane discussing their plans and was appalled. She told me that she and her husband had no idea what Gary and Jane were doing and did not agree. Elizabeth apologized for her daughter's actions and offered to help in any way she could. After everything that had transpired, it was difficult to trust anyone connected to Gary and Jane, but as we spoke, I could tell Elizabeth was genuinely distressed about the situation. She told anecdotes about her own father, who had lived with her in his latter years. She couldn't imagine treating a parent the same way Gary and Jane treated me. Before she went, Elizabeth handed me an envelope. There was a large check inside. She encouraged me to accept it, stating it would help with legal bills or whatever else I needed. I was astonished by her generosity and attempted to reject it, but she wouldn't have it. She made me promise that I would let her know if I needed anything else. It was good to hear that not everyone in Gary's new family agreed with his conduct, but it also made me sad to think that my son's in-laws were treating me better than he was. The court battle dragged on. Gary and Jane's lawyers were aggressive, launching every legal argument they could think of at us. Dean was doing a wonderful job of defending me, but the constant back and forth was exhausting. On a particularly rough day, I found myself sitting in the garden, gazing at the old treehouse Gary and I had built together when he was 10. It was aged and faded, but still standing. I remembered the summer we spent building it, Gary's delight as we pounded each nail, and the pride in his eyes when we were done. Now that same boy was attempting to take away the house where we had shared so many good memories. As I sat there, deep in meditation, my phone vibrated with a text. It came from Gary, our first direct communication in weeks. The message was quick and cold. "Dad, this is your final opportunity. Agree to sell your house and move in with us, or we'll make sure you get nothing." This was not the son I had reared. The Gary I knew would never have threatened his own father in this way. I did not respond to the text, but I did keep it. Dean had told me to keep track of all communication between Gary and Jane. The next day, I had a meeting set with Dean to discuss our future strategy. As I was about to depart, I heard a disturbance outside. I peeked out the window and saw Gary and Jane in the front yard, supervising a crew of workers putting up a for sale sign. I raced outdoors, wanting to know what was going on. Gary claimed they were simply prepared for the inevitable. I informed them they had no right to put up a sign because the house was not for sale. Jane laughed and replied, "It will be soon enough, old man." I stood there helplessly, watching the workers finish putting up the sign. Neighbors started to emerge from their homes, curious about the disturbance. That night, I was unable to sleep. I continued repeating the day's events in my head, trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong. I found myself thinking about Laura and what she would say if she could see what our boy had become. The next morning, I awoke to see my front yard packed with people. Gary and Jane had arranged an open house without my knowledge or consent. Potential buyers were roaming through my house, inspecting my belongings as if I weren't even present. I was infuriated. I called Dean immediately, and he encouraged me to capture everything. So I started filming and photographing the guests in my house, making sure to capture Gary and Jane's features properly. Some of the potential purchasers became uneasy when they realized I was the homeowner and had not authorized this open house. As the day progressed, more and more people showed up. Gary and Jane were excellent guests, taking people around my property and pointing out highlights as if they had the authority to market it. I overheard Jane informing one couple that they were assisting her poor, bewildered father-in-law in making the transfer to assisted living. The brazen deception infuriated me. I attempted to speak with some of the possible purchasers to explain the issue, but Gary and Jane kept interrupting me and guiding people away. At one point, Gary told someone that I was not quite right in the head. By the end of the day, I was both exhausted and heartbroken. After the last potential buyer had left, Gary and Jane remained, apparently satisfied with themselves. Gary had the arrogance to tell me that the open house was a huge success, with several interested parties. He told me I should start packing my belongings. I could not handle it anymore. Years of pent-up frustration and hurt spilled forth. I told Gary just how I felt about him. How selfish and greedy he'd become. I reminded him of all the sacrifices I had made and the love I had shown him. I questioned him how he could do this to me, in remembrance of his mother. For a brief moment I thought I saw a glimpse of the old Gary in his eyes, but when Jane murmured something in his ear, his countenance hardened. He said I was living in the past and needed to recognize that things had changed. They then went, leaving me alone in the house, which no longer seemed like home. That night I reached a choice. I couldn't keep living this way, always on edge, waiting for the next thing to happen. I needed to gain control of the situation. I called Dean and informed him that I wanted to pursue more aggressive legal action. He cautioned me that things may get ugly, that Gary and Jane might retaliate even more harshly, but I didn't care anymore. I needed to fight for my home and my dignity. The following few weeks were filled with legal meetings and court appearances. Gary and Jane's lawyers threw everything they could at us, but Dean was great. He produced evidence of their harassment, including video footage from the unauthorized open house. He battled over my rights as a long-term resident and co-owner of the property. Throughout it all, Gary and Jane sat in the courtroom, chatting to each other and their lawyers while rarely glancing at me. It was as if they no longer saw me as a person, but as a barrier to be overcome. The stress of the legal struggle was getting to me. I lost weight and had difficulty sleeping. My doctor was concerned about my blood pressure and emphasized the significance of attempting to remain calm. But how could I remain calm while my own son attempted to make me homeless? As the court case reached its conclusion, I had another unexpected visit, this time from Jane's father, Robert. He, like his wife, appeared uneasy as he stood on my porch. I allowed him in, wondering what had brought him here. Robert was straightforward. He informed me that he was ashamed of his daughter's actions and disappointed in Gary. He claimed that he and Elizabeth had raised Jane to be better than this and couldn't understand what had changed her. Then Robert did something unexpected. He offered to buy out Gary and Jane's half of my house. He stated he couldn't stand by while they destroyed our family for money. His offer startled me, and I had no idea how to answer. Robert assured me that this was not charity. He said that he and Elizabeth had already planned to make Jane and Gary a hefty down payment on a new house. Instead, they planned to use the money to buy out Gary's part in my residence. This manner, I could stay in my home while Gary and Jane received the money they desired. Robert's kindness surpassed my expectations. It appeared too good to be true, the ideal solution to this misery. However, I was also suspicious. I'd been hurt too many times in the previous months to trust lightly. I told Robert that I needed time to consider his offer and discuss it with my lawyer. He understood and handed me his card, asking me to phone him when I had made a decision. The next morning, I called Dean and informed him of Robert's offer. He cautioned me to tread cautiously. We agreed to meet with Robert to discuss the details. The meeting was held in the dean's office a few days later. Robert brought his own lawyer, and we spent hours discussing the details of the proposition. By the end of the meeting, we had reached an arrangement that appeared fair to all. Under the terms of the agreement, Robert would buy out Gary's part in the house, giving him and Jane the funds they needed for their new home. In exchange, I would maintain full ownership of my home. Of course, there were some conditions. I had to commit not to sell the house for at least 5 years, and if I did decide to sell later, Gary and Jane would have first refusal. It wasn't a flawless solution, but it was better than I could have expected. I would keep my home, while Gary and Jane would receive their money. Maybe, I thought, this will be the end of the war. I should have known better. When Gary and Jane learned about the arrangement, they were enraged. They accused Robert and Elizabeth of interfering, siding with me against their own daughter. Gary called me, raving about how I had turned his in-laws against him. I tried to explain that this was a fantastic solution for everyone and that they were still receiving what they wanted, but Gary refused to listen. He claimed I poisoned Jane's parents against them and was manipulating everyone. Gary closed our talk by informing me he never wanted to see me again. He stated that he no longer regarded himself as having a father. These comments wound worse than everything else that had transpired. Despite Gary and Jane's misgivings, the transaction went through. Robert bought out Gary's part in the house, making me the only owner. The legal proceedings had been concluded and the for sale sign had been taken from my front yard. In the weeks that followed, I attempted to return to normal. I started taking better care of myself, eating correctly and exercising. I heard through the grapevine that Gary and Jane had purchased their dream home in the exclusive community they'd been looking at. I wondered if they were content, if the money and the large house were worth everything they'd done to obtain them. As the months went, I gradually came to terms with everything. Final update. It's been a while, about 2 years after the court struggle finished. One day, I got an unexpected delivery in the mail. It came from Jane's parents, Robert and Elizabeth. The contents included a photo album and a letter. The letter mentioned that they had been browsing through old family photos and discovered several pictures of Gary from various family occasions throughout the years. They thought I'd want to have them. It was a wonderful gesture that I greatly appreciated. The last page of the album had a surprise. A recent photo of Gary and Jane posing in front of their new home showed Jane holding a little placard that read "Baby on board." They were planning to become parents. I sat there for a long time, staring at the photograph. I was about to become a grandfather. It was something I had fantasized about for years, teaching my grandchildren to play catch or telling them goodnight stories. Now it was happening, but I didn't know if I'd ever get to meet this youngster. That night, I wrote Gary a note. I obtained their address from the return label. In the letter, I congratulated him on the baby and expressed my happiness for him. I told him I understood if he didn't want me in his life, but I hoped we could reconcile someday. I told him I loved him and would always love him, no matter what happened. I mailed the letter the next day, not anticipating any reaction. Weeks passed, and I heard nothing. I tried to put it out of my mind and concentrate on the positive things in my life, but I couldn't stop thinking about Gary and the baby. Then, around 8 months after I submitted the letter, I was outside watering my flowers when a car pulled up. To my surprise, Gary exited. He looked different, older and more serious. He stood there for a bit, simply looking at me, before approaching and hugging me without saying anything. It was strange at first, but I could feel him relax, so I hugged back. We remained there for a moment, neither speaking. Gary's eyes welled up with emotions as we parted ways. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said. "I'm so sorry." We stepped inside and Gary shared his heart over cups of coffee. He told me how ashamed he was of his actions, and how the burden of trying to fit into Jane's environment had shifted his focus. He claimed that being a father made him understand how badly he had treated me. Gary stated that he and Jane had been going through some difficult times. The stress of the new house, the baby on the way, and the guilt over what they'd done to me had all put a strain on their relationship. They'd started couples counseling, which had helped Gary see how far he'd wandered from the ideals I'd instilled in him. I listened to Gary's apology and explanation. As he spoke, I saw the guy I'd raised, the gentle, sensitive son who had been my best friend for so many years. But I could see changes in him. He was more mature and mindful of the implications of his behavior. Gary informed me about the baby, a young girl due in a few months. He explained that he and Jane had done a lot of thinking and wanted me to be a part of their child's life. I was moved by the offer, but I made it clear that things could not simply return to normal. Too much had occurred. There had been too many harsh words and actions. If we were to continue our relationship, we needed to agree on new conditions. Gary understood. He advised we start slowly, perhaps meeting for coffee once a week, and gradually restore our friendship. I agreed. As Gary was leaving, he paused at the door. "Dad," he began, "I know I have no right to ask, but would you consider being present when the baby is born? I really want my daughter to meet her grandfather." The request astonished me and left me feeling conflicted. I wanted nothing more than to be present for my granddaughter's birth, but should I trust Gary and Jane? Finally, I told Gary I would think about it. He nodded, acknowledging my hesitation. Over the next 2 months, Gary and I met for coffee on a regular basis, occasionally with Jane. These sessions were frequently awkward at first, as we all danced around the elephant in the room. However, we gradually began to ease around each other. Jane apologized for her role in what had occurred. She added that she had felt a lot of pressure from her parents to marry up and provide a specific lifestyle. She'd become engrossed with materialism and lost sight of what was truly important. Pregnancy had also served as a wake-up call for her. I appreciated Jane's apologies, but as with Gary, I made it plain that re-establishing trust would take time. She seems to understand and respect my boundaries. Gary called me 2 weeks before the due date, panicked. Jane had gone into labor early and was on her way to the hospital. I did not hesitate to meet him there. I spent the following few hours pacing the hospital waiting room. Gary came out at regular intervals to provide me with updates. After what felt like a lifetime, Gary emerged with a big smile on his face. "Dad, do you want to meet your granddaughter?" I followed Gary inside the room. Jane was in bed, fatigued but delighted, holding the tiniest, most precious little bundle I'd ever seen. Gary carefully removed the baby from Jane and delivered her to me. "Dad, meet Lily Laura." My granddaughter was stunning when I first held her. Her middle name is Laura, which is the name of my late wife. I looked at Gary and questioned him. He cracked a grin and continued. "We wanted her to have a piece of grandma, to honor the amazing parents who raised me." Over the next few months, I spent as much time as possible with Lily. Gary and Jane were fantastic in incorporating me into her life. My friendship with Gary and Jane also improved. We talked more honestly about what had happened and worked through our concerns. So that is it, Reddit. That is my experience over the last 2 years. I appreciate all of the helpful suggestions you've given me, but it's time for me to quit writing and spend more time with my family. I found a tampon in my husband's car and another in our bedroom. Our youngster suddenly got new clothes that I didn't buy, so I assumed he was cheating. For 7 years, married for 4, I, 29F, have been with my spouse, 30M. I have never had cause to fear he was even slightly unhappy with our marriage or even disloyal to me. He enjoys making jokes about us still experiencing the honeymoon phase with 2 children in tow almost 5 years. Had it not for the shocking discovery in his car last month, I would not have questioned it or him. I saw something slatted between the cushions when buckling our daughter into her car seat. Pulling it out, I found it to be a tampon. Had I not had an IUD stopping my period for the past year and had not even noticed the wrapper type, this would not have been so strange. When I told my husband where I had found it and why I was almost sure it wasn't mine, he seemed not to know what it was, let alone why I was holding it. He shrugged and said most likely Fiona, his coworker, owned it. My husband often commutes to lunch with his colleagues, and as we live somewhat close to Fiona and her husband, I assumed it was quite likely the tampon had dropped out of her bag either any time he had driven with her or given her a ride. Not particularly significant. I dismissed it until a few weeks later, when we had supper with Fiona and her husband. I had so wanted to believe my husband, yet I couldn't get over the way it had been buried in the seat and how my husband had seemed to have no concern for it whatsoever. Perhaps he was acting stupidly. It's unknown. I did something that, looking back, I find really insane. While we were out together, I staged an emergency and asked Fiona whether she carried any tampons. I sighed with relief when she handed me one nearly exactly like the tampon I had discovered in our back seat. Thus, the tampon there was most likely the same one used here, and most likely, there was an innocent explanation for why it had been placed in the back seat in the first place. Until I discovered another tampon this morning, this time in my sock drawer, I assumed I would have seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene goods. The idea of my husband having an affair makes me physically sick. Even more nauseated the idea that the lady might have left these tampons out for me to find. Should it be my husband's coworker, why would she offer me one the other night and give herself away? Under any other circumstance, I would want to discuss this with my husband. But I feel too ill and ashamed to approach him with what I discovered. What action ought I to take? Comments. I never put a tampon in a sock drawer. I had a period 30 years ago. Trust your gut, then get cameras. Neither does I. I have thought up so many reasons for the tampons that would not point to my spouse, but none of them actually make sense. If it means verifying what I currently suspect, I'm afraid to set up a camera. Has Fiona dropped by your house and had time to plant the tampon? She visited our house numerous times, and vice versa. She wasn't over any time in the past week, hence if she planted that second tampon, she had to have found a window of time when I wasn't home. Every time she and her husband visit, we all stay downstairs. You would have to go rather far to get to our bedroom. That is, past the other bedrooms, around our dogs, over the safety gate. Not saying it's impossible, but on a brief toilet stop it's really difficult. I would guess. Your children's ages are, could they have located a tampon and randomly placed it? 2 and nearly 4. Both have a mischievous streak, hence I didn't want to rule out the chance of one of them shifting stuff around, but I can't see how they could get their hands on 1, maybe 2 odd tampons that I never bought. Update 1. My own hell for the past few weeks has been thinking about every conceivable source of 2 tampons. Nonetheless, I wanted to provide an update. Not long after uploading on here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon from Fiona, my husband's ignorance, the tampon in the back seat and the one in the sock drawer. All the things I suspected but didn't want to accept. The tampons, save from the one I had already thrown away, matched exactly in varying absorbencies. I hadn't left anywhere my husband or daughters would have found them and relocated them. Regarding what they were or where they had come from, my daughters were clueless. With my spouse or without, my sister was sure it was Fiona. She advised asking Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue since direct confrontation of either party still sounded like a horrible idea. Sadly, they already had preparations in mind. Our house for any misplaced or foreign items, there were none. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior, there was none, and even the girls for any new friends they could have met. The final aspect was especially important to my sister's husband, and it helped explain his inclination to think the tampons were safe. Given my husband was the one driving the children to and from daycare and most other activities during the week. If anything had been happening in or around our house, he said it would be almost impossible to keep from me and the girls. That helped me somewhat to feel better. I felt differently only till my younger kid, 2 years old, dropped something down last week. My husband demanded that I continue at work while he stayed home with her, even though I wanted to be the one looking after her. I had no problem with that. At that point, we were all already starting to move past the tampon crisis since my sister and her husband considered it as a positive indication that he would take the time off at short notice. By the 3rd or 4th day, I was merely glad to see a nearly healthy child and a spouse supporting her through it. But towards the conclusion of that week, I returned to find something unusual. Now clad in a onesie I had never seen before, the child I had left that morning in an old PJ set had a small clip in her hair. Though I have a very decent idea of what my children wear on a daily basis, especially in terms of attire, I cannot say I have the best recollection. Before we would have our second, I had vowed off full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front long before. Long snaps are simply a pain in the ass and a no-go for effective diaper changes. Just not something I would dress her in. My hubby knows as much. He definitely doesn't accessorize the girls' clothes and neither does he plan for or buy them. The idea of someone being around our ill child without our awareness confused and rather stunned me. I went straight to inquire whether anyone had been over to visit my spouse or the girls. I didn't second think. Like before, he seemed perplexed and asked me why I would believe that. All day it had been him and the children. Once more, I asked him whether someone had stopped over to say hello. He denied it. I should cool off, he advised. Our oldest daughter was in the room and realized something was wrong, so even if I might have screamed out and came forward with the charges right then and there. My husband swore that the girls had not been with anyone but him. I asked him a 3rd time in a subdued manner if anyone had been near our children. He also denied styling anyone's hair or shopping for new clothing. I chose to leave since our daughter was in the room and my feelings were all over the range. Then I couldn't make sense of it. It hardly looks clearer now after I drove myself mad with illogical arguments. Comments. My 2-year-old can only string a few words at a time to respond to a few inquiries. She responds depending on the cues I provide when I question her about her time with daddy or her wardrobe. I might inquire, "Who gave you that pretty bow?" And she might answer pretty bow back to me, or mama or daddy over and over. Almost 4, My older daughter was in daycare that morning. She cannot remember anything different from that day. Her memory of the PJ change or the hair clip is lacking, hence my estimate is she was changed during that morning, but I'm not sure exactly. My 45-minute trip to work makes stopping for lunch very impractical. My sister has not observed anything unusual. She has been gracious enough to leave work and drive past several times here and there. At the front door is a Ring camera. I have the app on my phone with alerts enabled. Not yet, nothing exists. I'm merely the least tech-savvy person, hence I would be open to suggestions for more covert surveillance, worried another camera will be easy to find. Edit. We indeed routinely test our carbon monoxide detectors. One of the hair clips might have originated from a daycare. Although I could see the hair clip as a possibility, less plausible with the onesie. If either of my younger daughters had returned with something like that before, I would have noticed, especially since it was the kind of onesie I detest with a passion, LOL. She hadn't been to daycare in days. People say they are eager to know how this story ends. The Hollywood horror ending is my financial one. Hopefully, I dreamed about the dogs too so I could at last quit gathering their imagined shits and things. Update 2. I knew I was nowhere with the accusations and half-baked guesses after almost losing my head over a hair clip and a onesie. I wasn't sleeping, eating or taking care of myself the way I should have been since I was so consumed in the paranoia and suffering of my circumstances and I wasn't getting any answers. I thus decided to activate the hidden cameras and have them sent to my sister's house. My brother-in-law agreed to assist with the install/setup at my place. Still, I got my much-needed validation before the cameras were ever delivered. Last week, while I was at work, a Ring alert let me know the motion at the front door. Half expecting to see a delivery person, pet or lawn care salesman for the 15th time, you may picture my astonishment when I watched a footage of a young woman leading my daughter into the house hand in hand with my husband and our other daughter close by. My spouse was at work. The girls were meant to be in childcare. From what I knew, the wife was residing 2 states away under court order keeping her there. I asked my husband straight away what this woman was doing in our house. He ignored me, so I texted him. Knowing I had received the Ring alert, he most likely understood he had messed up by entering the front door and sought to postpone the unavoidable. He was foolish too. But after the 5th or 6th call he at last answered. As I would subsequently learn, the woman on the camera was my husband's sister. She most certainly supplied the bow, the onesie, and the tampons. She is also a recovered addict who spent the better part of her childhood and young adulthood pressuring the silence of another one of my husband's family members following her molestation. She is also a registered sex offender. Years had passed without seeing or hearing from her, and from the way my husband spoke about her, I never expected I would ever would. But here she was, in our house surrounded by our kids. Let me say, I was enraged. Though it was hardly an affair at all, knowing who it was and why all of this had been happening made it much more repulsive. My husband was particularly high on the list since my sister-in-law, fresh out of another stay in recovery, had wanted to rebuild relationships with those she had harmed. My husband had been meeting in secret, usually at our house while I was at work, not wanting me to know, or worse, keep her away from our family and children. They would come in via the garage in my husband's car so the Ring camera at the front entrance wouldn't alert me. She had even stayed in our bed overnight on a weekend when I had gone on a business trip. On a night my husband told me he dropped off our daughters, she watched over them. She bought the girls' clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow, the identical ones my husband had promised in his life that I had dressed her in myself. My spouse insisted this was all in my head, the tampons, the one piece, the bow, everything else. Shrugging aside each increasingly disturbing revelation like it was news to him and telling me I was being unreasonable, he was quite happy to see me suffer for weeks over a lady he maintained did not exist. 2 years after I had given birth to a child, 4 years after I had told him one of my main worries about parenthood was PPD like my mother had experienced with me. I worried about not being totally present for our children and about having shame and remorse all around as they got older. He advised me to get back off and reassess my mental health. I missed the girls too much and wasn't sleeping enough. Since he was my spouse and since no other way of events made sense, I gave him the benefit of the doubts. After a month of this mental game, I have nothing to show for my trust except this miserable state and a great deal of resentment. Call the cops and a lawyer, comments 1. Reaction. Already on it. We are, believe me, walking burnt ground with this. Am I the asshole for asking my son to stop wearing his favorite jacket because it looks gay? Original post. I'm a single dad to my son, Oliver 10M. He's with me most of the time, and sees his mum every other weekend. He's an awesome kid, creative, full of energy, and he's got his own sense of style that's pretty unique. He loves bright colors, nail polish, and clothes that some people might think are more girly. If I'm honest, I think Oliver might be gay, and I'm totally cool with that. I've always made it clear that whoever he turns out to be, I'll support him 100%. Because of how he dresses and acts, Oliver's had a really tough time with other kids. He got bullied so badly at his old school that I ended up pulling him out and homeschooling him. The school wasn't helpful at all, and it was heartbreaking to see him go through that. He's struggled to make friends, and it kills me to see him feel so alone. Now, he's starting back at school in September, and he's really excited about it. But recently, we were at a cousin's birthday party, and Oliver wore his favorite jacket, which is a bright pink, sparkly one that he loves. Some of the other kids started picking on him, saying he looked gay. I stepped in, got the kids to apologize, but it ruined the day for Oliver. I'm worried about how things will go when he's back at school. I've been thinking about whether I should talk to Oliver about maybe toning it down a bit, especially when he's around new people. Not because I want him to change who he is, but because I hate seeing him get hurt and feel like an outcast. I don't want him to feel like he has to hide who he is, but I also don't want him to be picked on or excluded because of it. But then, I feel like a complete arsehole for even thinking about this. I don't want him to think that I'm ashamed of him or that he has to conform to be accepted. I want him to feel free to be himself, but I'm also scared of him being hurt by others who don't get it. So, would I be the asshole if I talked to Oliver about maybe being a bit more low-key with his style? Comments, from all 3 posts. Commenter, don't do it. Kids will still bully him and all he will remember is that you deterred him from expressing himself. Trust me, the same thing occurred in our house. I was trying to keep him from being bullied, but my child felt as though I didn't accept him and that he needed to pretend he was something he wasn't. Lots of later life therapy. If he's gay, if he's straight, let him be himself and tell him as long as he likes his clothes, that's all that matters. Sincerely, the mom of an amazing queer kid. OOP. I get that, but at the same time it is so heartbreaking seeing the same thing happen to him over, and over, and over again. Commenter. Jesus, where do you live? Most kids don't care about this kind of thing these days. OOP. I live in the West Midlands of England. I honestly don't think your point about most kids not caring is at all accurate. I see it every day. Commenter. Do not dull his shine because other people don't understand him. I understand it may be coming from a place of protection, but it needs to be addressed with the potential aggressors, not with forcing your son to change who he is. OOP, but when you can't do anything more with potential aggressors. I have done, and will continue to do everything I can. But sadly I can't literally watch his back 24/7, even though I would if I could. Anytime he has a comment made to him he breaks his little heart and it is so devastating seeing him go through that again. And update. Hey all, it's been about 26 days since my original post, and I thought I'd give an update now that Oliver has had his first week back at school. I can happily say that so far, things are going much better than I'd hoped. Over the summer, Oliver and I had a really important heart-to-heart. I sat him down and told him just how incredibly proud I am of the person he is becoming. I made sure he knew that there is absolutely nothing he could ever do that would change the way I see him or make me love him any less. Honestly, it was a bit emotional, and I even got a bit choked up. I told him that if wearing his favorite jacket, the one that's caused some hurt before, made him happy, I'd stand behind him 100%. But I also wanted to make sure he was prepared. I explained that, while I'll always be there for him, I can't always be around to protect him. And he might have to stand up for himself if kids make fun of him. I made it clear that this doesn't mean he should change anything about who he is, but that he needs to be ready to handle it if anyone says anything cruel. Oliver understood, and we spent the summer coming up with some playful comebacks together. He really wanted to take the jacket with him to school, so we made it a bit of a project, imagining the kind of things kids might say and crafting witty replies that he could fire back with. It was actually pretty fun, and I think it helped him feel more confident about it. Now back to school. His new teacher knows all about his past struggles with bullying, and she's been amazing. She's keeping a close eye on things and making sure he feels safe and comfortable. It's made such a difference already, and Oliver's first week couldn't have gone better. He's even made a friend, a boy named Sam, and they've really hit it off. They're planning to meet up tomorrow at the wacky warehouse, and Oliver can't stop talking about it. It's been a long time since I've seen him this excited about spending time with someone his age. I know it's still early days, but seeing him come home happy and smiling each day has been such a relief. Thanks to everyone who gave advice and encouragement on my original post. I really took a lot of it to heart, and I think it made a big difference in how I approached all this. Update 2. Hey, I just wanted to hop on and give a small update about Oliver's playdate over the weekend. Firstly, When Oliver was getting ready, he wanted to wear all his flamboyant clothes. He asked me if I thought it was a good idea. His friend had seen him in his jacket, but he was a little worried how he would react to the full Oliver. I told him to wear whatever he wanted, and if this friend was worth being friends with, they would accept him for exactly how he is. This made Oliver smile. He wore his full Oliver outfit. When we were walking in, I could feel Oliver getting a bit nervous. He was bullied so much in his last school for how he was, so I understood why. I held his hand tight and gave it 2 squeezes. "This means I love you," something I learned to teach him from Reddit actually. The friend's dad was with him and he looked at Oliver and gave a little curious look, but apart from that it was fine. The boy said he loved Oliver's clothes. They spent about 4 hours playing, and we ended up eating together. On the way home, I told Oliver how proud I am of the little man he is. I am so proud of how he is so willing to be himself, and so brave to continue despite any backlash he gets. I love him so much. This is my final update on this account. I don't know if I'll ever show you these posts, Oliver. Maybe in a few years when you're older, so we can laugh at how worried I was about you. Your dad is so proud of you. I think you are the most amazing person in the whole world. Even when you drive me absolutely nuts. I am so lucky to get to be your father. I am so lucky you are in my life. I love you. Twin brothers' lies destroyed my life. My parents kicked me out, and now after years of neglect, they're asking for my money. I'm a 28-year-old female with a twin brother. Growing up, my twin brother and I had quite different treatment from our parents. For some reason, my parents were certain that my brother was destined for greatness, whereas I was labeled the black sheep since I was more interested in sports and making friends than in studying. They continually compared us, which was discouraging and damaged my self-esteem from an early age. As a child, I had to watch my brother have elaborate birthday parties for his pals, while I was treated as an afterthought. He frequently had sleepovers with his pals, whereas I was never allowed to bring my friends home. To be honest, I dreaded every moment of my youth. My grandma was the only person in the family who seemed to care about me. When she came, she always brought me my favorite chocolates and occasionally gave me a few bucks to treat myself later. As the years went, this overt preference for my twin brother evolved into emotional abuse directed at me. My parents would openly insult my academics and activities. No matter how hard I tried, I could never satisfy their expectations of being the ideal child. Although I excelled at athletics, they forbade me from participating in extracurricular activities because they wanted me to concentrate completely on my education, just like my brother. As a child, I felt frustrated and helpless. Later, during my sophomore year, I was grounded again, this time for using Snapchat on my phone. I hadn't done anything wrong, but like all teenagers, I downloaded the app to stay in touch with my friends. However, my parents considered this as a major crime and a violation of trust because they had barred me from talking with my pals. They went crazy, flung all of my belongings around the room, ripped the doors from their hinges, and informed me I would have no privacy as long as I lived under their roof. Watching my parents attack me in this way, my identical brother, rather than sticking up for me, made things worse. Our parents' wrongful acts produced a toxic environment, allowing him to take advantage of the situation. He developed a habit of lying about me, falsely accusing me of things I never did, so he could get away with everything. If he stole something, he'd easily transfer the blame onto me, and my parents, who were already inclined to believe the worst about me, happily accepted his falsehoods. He would insult me in front of my schoolmates and mock my attractiveness. Despite this, I had a large circle of friends at school because I was personable and willing to connect. My twin, on the other hand, suffered socially and disliked the fact that I could interact with others while he, as an introvert, felt uncomfortable. This jealousy boiled over during our 14th birthday party, when none of his buddies came up. I'm not sure why they did that to him, but in stark contrast, my friends treated me to ice cream, and I had a fantastic day. This irritated my brother even more. To get retribution, my brother started spreading false tales about me at school, depicting me as a spoiled brat. He falsely accused me of physically assaulting him at home since our parents loved him more. He escalated the situation without my knowledge. To fake proof, he would punch himself, causing injuries such as a black eye or a bruised shoulder. The next day, he would boldly stroll into school, exhibiting his self-inflicted injuries as proof of my alleged assault and fabricating stories. When our parents questioned him about the injuries, he would lie, claiming that they were the result of innocent activities such as playing football with friends. The lies and his supposed black eyes gained traction, and many began to believe his twisted account of events. It didn't take long for whispers to spread, and my friends began to look at me suspiciously. At first, I noticed minor changes. Friends who used to converse with me in the halls seemed distant, and invites to group hangouts grew fewer and farther between. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and people were unwilling to engage with the allegedly pampered girl charged with violence. One day, I got the confidence to ask my ex-best friend what had happened between us. She said that my twin brother had been circulating falsehoods about me. She disclosed the specifics of the lies he had told everyone, accusing me of actions I had never committed. I was stunned to hear her remarks. The emotion was a combination of incredulity and betrayal, as if the ground beneath me had given way. My brother, whom I grew up with, was spreading lies about me, accusing me of things I would never even consider committing. It was a betrayal that struck deep, leaving me with a knot in my stomach and a sorrowful heart. I addressed my brother the following day at school, but he chose to ignore me. I begged him to stop lying about me, but he smirked and said I deserved to die alone. I was at a loss for words since his lies and actions were beginning to frighten me. I wanted to talk to my parents, but I was frightened they would believe my brother instead of me. Isolation stung, especially since I had always been open to establishing friends. My brother's jealousy-fueled lies seemed to be breaking apart the bonds I'd made over the years. The rumors spread among teachers as well. It was a weird sensation, as if I were living in a parallel realm where my genuine self was obscured by the wicked fiction told by my own twin. The lies had progressed beyond typical teenage chatter. They were now influencing how others regarded me. The unpleasant whispers swiftly reached my principal's ears, and my worst nightmare became reality. The principal summoned me and my brother, along with our parents, to his office to discuss the purported rumors. I sat there, my heart racing, as the principal demanded the truth. I believed my brother would finally come clean, but he doubled down on his lies. He told the principal that the reports were real and depicted me as a bully who beat him up when our parents were not around. I could not believe it. Shock rushed over me as my brother continued to tell this twisted story about how I was furious at him for receiving more attention from our parents. He held to his story like a glue, despite the fact that it was all lies. After hearing my brother's story, my mother burst into tears and clutched him like he was a hero. My father tried to console my brother, assuring him that it was brave of him to speak up and that he would ensure that nothing bad happened to him. Following that day, I attempted to defend myself, arguing with the principal that everything was fabricated. I felt as if I was drowning in a sea of accusations, desperately trying to get to the top, but my brother persisted, saying that I was this furious, violent person who took out my emotions on him every day. My mother's tears flowed as she grabbed onto my brother and gave me accusing stares. It was like fighting against a wall of belief in my brother's fabricated story. My principal sharply chastised me, stating that the school did not accept bullying and that these were grounds for suspension. I begged him not to suspend me, but he shook his head, saying he couldn't simply let it go. I implored him, tears flowing down my cheeks, attempting to explain that I hadn't done anything to my brother. The principal sternly informed me that I would be suspended for 10 days so that others would not bully anyone. It hit me hard, and I began crying even more, virtually asking him to reconsider. My parents, outraged and embarrassed by the incident, hauled me out of the principal's office. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to argue my case and make them understand, but they weren't having it. We left the school, my heart full of frustration and embarrassment. When we came home, things changed drastically. My father started packing my belongings out of the blue. I was stunned, perplexed, and had no idea what was going on. My mother asked him what he was doing, but he simply yelled that he couldn't allow me live in the same house as my brother anymore. I was crying, virtually on my knees, and begged my brother to give them the truth, but he remained cool, unmoved by my feelings. My father kept packing my belongings before throwing the bag into our foyer. I clung to my father's legs, asking him not to kick me away. It felt as if a nightmare were happening. He informed me that a bully like me did not deserve to reside in his home and that he would call his mother, my grandmother, to come and pick me up if she wished. It felt as if the world had collapsed beneath me. I stood there in amazement, surrounded by my stuff scattered over the foyer, booted out of my own home. Eventually, my grandmother showed up. She helped me grab all of my belongings and load them into the car. She helped me into the passenger seat and made sure I was wearing my seatbelt before strolling towards my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and when my father opened it, she began yelling at him for treating me this way. With firm determination, she informed him that if he ever approached or attempted to contact me again, she would not hesitate to call the police or CPS, because what he had done to a youngster like me might land him in jail. My mother attempted to shift blame by telling her that it was my fault. However, my grandmother was having none of it. She stood firm, defending me and emphasized that I was only a child and did not deserve to be treated in such a harsh manner. That was the first time I realized how powerful my grandmother was. She did not cower before my parents, and unlike them, she trusted me. We eventually drove away, leaving behind my house, the only place I had ever grown up. I can't even begin to describe how excruciatingly painful I felt at the time. I recall crying on the bed and refusing to eat anything, despite my grandmother's insistence. When I informed her what my brother had done, she was astonished as well. She told me that she trusted my version of the story, and I was relieved that I had at least one person on my side. When the 10-day suspension was removed, returning to school was like going back into the lion's lair. As I entered the familiar hallways, my classmates' expressions told volumes. Judgment, murmurs, and sidelong stares. The weight of the bogus charges remained in the air. Meanwhile, my brother shamelessly ignored me and like I didn't exist. He had made friends with a few people who believed his version of the tale and saw him as the victim of my attacks. I tried to tell everyone my side of the tale, but it went unheard. I was an outsider, saddled with an unfair reputation that stuck to me like a shadow. No matter where I went, the classroom, the cafeteria, or the corridors, the eyes that met mine were filled with contempt and suspicion. I became a loner. I would keep my head down, attend all of my lessons, eat lunch alone in the cafeteria, and then return home. I didn't have any friends, and it seemed like no one wanted me there. Throughout this, my parents never called to check on me. My grandmother would continuously remind me that this was not my fault and that things would eventually be fine. I graduated from high school with good grades and was looking forward to attending college, where I hoped to have a better life. It wasn't until I went away to college that I discovered what freedom felt like. For the first time, no one was looking over my shoulder, comparing my grades, or attempting to compete with me. I met and became friends with folks who shared my interests. Despite the mental and physical scars left by my family and classmates over the years, I focused on putting it all behind me and making the most of my college experience. During this period, I realized I had an aptitude for content writing. I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure if it would work out in the long run. As a result, I chose to give up on my dream. However, in order to supplement my income, I began working as a freelance writer. I signed up for several freelancing websites, which helped me get tasks from well-known companies. This is how I progressively began to compile a portfolio of my work. Throughout college, I maintained my side hustle and never asked my parents for a penny. When I finished college, instead of taking a corporate job, I realized I could work full-time as a content writer. I was doing well since I had numerous clients and long-term professional ties with them, allowing me to work on multiple projects. Having a respectable freelancing business not only gave me financial independence, but it also enabled me to explore the world as a digital nomad. Traveling helped me heal from my past, even if it was not easy. I saved as much money as I could and took a gamble on myself. I've seen a lot of the world over the years, but there's always so much more to see. My grandma was the only person I considered family throughout all of this, and I cherished her. She was quite unhappy when I moved out, but she knew that I needed to be self-sufficient. Despite my tight schedule, I made it a point to be available for her whenever possible. On weekends, I would pay Mom a visit, frequently eating meals or simply sitting on the porch, absorbed in chats about everything from childhood memories to current events. On weekends, I would spend full days assisting her with household tasks or taking her to the neighboring park for a leisurely walk. I recently completed one of the most important assignments of my career. While I can't reveal the name, I was extraordinarily fortunate to write articles and product descriptions for them. After the job was completed, I asked the team I worked with to submit grade evaluations on my websites, which they were delighted to do. I grabbed screenshots of several of their evaluations and shared them on Instagram, understanding that collaborating with this brand was a big deal. As expected, several other content writers congratulated me on my professional accomplishments, and some even reprinted my article to help get the word out. This is how I began receiving messages from strangers who also wanted assistance with their websites. My family observed this as well, and some contacted me to express their congratulations. My college's principal eventually called me, seeing that I was doing well and inviting me to come to the college for a seminar to talk to students about starting a career as a content writer. I was apprehensive because I'm not good at public speaking, but I decided to take a chance and consented. When I found myself standing in front of expectant faces, sharing my experiences and insights, I felt as if my life had gone full circle. In my speech, I discussed my hardships and how I pushed hard to keep going despite the difficult times. It was a truly rewarding experience to encourage others and contribute to the growth of the writing community. Some of my videos went viral on Facebook as people connected with them. It felt fantastic to be finally recognized for my efforts. Last week, I was asked to talk on a local news program. It was a show about the benefits of content creation, and they asked me to share my experiences and insights with their audience. I was nervous, but yet excited about the prospect. During the event, I discussed my experiences, the value of customer feedback, and how a simple appreciation message may lead to fantastic opportunities. The opportunity to reach a larger audience and encourage more professionals in the area was both humbling and exciting. When it finally aired, I uploaded some of these snippets on Instagram since I was honored to be invited to a TV show. This is how my relatives and cousins first learned about my professional accomplishments. Because my parents never mentioned me to anyone, they had no idea I was working with well-known brands and appearing on television shows. This is how word swiftly went among my family. I guess this TV interview must have finally reached my parents' ears, because just a few days later, I was working on another project while keeping my phone on mute. When I finished my work, I checked my phone and was surprised to find 6 missed calls from my mother. I was astonished to see her name on my phone because it had been a long time since she had phoned me. After so many years of stillness, I couldn't understand why she was phoning. I hesitantly called her back, and she answered right away. I asked her if everything was fine, and my mother began to congratulate me. My father, who was most likely sitting directly next to her, also joined in on the chat. He began to probe about my life and well-being, and I responded without much thinking. It didn't strike me as weird until they asked how much I was making these days. I explained that it was none of their business. My father answered, "We're family, so don't be shy about telling us your income." I assured him that I was doing well financially. Hearing this, my mother proceeded to describe how difficult their life was these days, and my brow furrowed in suspicion. Basically, this is how our talk went. "Mom, we're retired now, and we've wanted to renovate the house for a while. It's not in great shape, but we don't have any funds left." Me, "Okay." Mom said, "Your achievement has given us hope. We saw your TV interview today and thought you might be able to assist us out by paying for the improvements. Dad, after all, we are a family. Please do not hesitate to share some of your revenue with us. We genuinely need your help." Me, "Are you kidding me? Why are you asking for money when you haven't even spoken to me in years? I'm not sure what prompted you to contact me, and while I appreciate your congratulations, I won't be able to assist you." Hearing this, my mother began telling me that I was being selfish and that I needed to support them as a family. My father emphasized that as my parents, they deserved to be cared for, and that this was the least I could do. I was so angry at this point that I wanted to tell them off. Suddenly, I had an idea. Instead of simply disagreeing with them, I would teach them a lesson once and for all for thinking they could mooch off of me. After my parents mistreated me for so many years, I told them that I was willing to help them provided they agreed to my demands. My father was curious and asked me what it was. Without hesitation, I made my demand. If they wanted my assistance, they had to openly confess, in front of our family and friends, that my brother was the mastermind behind the false stories that had harmed my reputation. I wanted them to embarrass my brother in front of everyone, just like they had humiliated me by believing his lies and manipulations. I wanted them to accept responsibility for their acts and recognize the anguish they had caused. Hearing about my untenable state, my father began to question the necessity of such an admission. My mother told me that this was all unnecessary and that we could have a private discussion without engaging others, but I stood firm. This was a non-negotiable requirement for any further aid they wanted me to provide. As the tension rose, my father raised his voice, establishing his authority as my father, and began to underline that it was my responsibility to assist my family in need. My mother, in a last-ditch effort, persuaded me to do the right thing and assist them, citing the years they had spent raising me. I couldn't help but see the irony in their sudden attractiveness. I reminded them of the past, that they had kicked me out, and that my grandmother, not them, had reared me. They became increasingly angry, but I told them unequivocally that if they wanted to approach me and request financial aid, the truth had to be acknowledged publicly, and my brother had to face the consequences of his conduct. Since this talk, my parents have been calling me often, but I'm ignoring them. I'm beginning to regret even phoning them back that day. I'd like to know if I'd be a complete idiot if I didn't aid my parents. Update. It's been a crazy week since I last shared my story, and the outpouring of support and encouragement has been astounding. It's encouraging to know that I'm not alone at this moment. I'm happy everyone believes that I shouldn't interact with my parents or even contemplate assisting them after everything they've put me through. I gave them such a requirement since I knew they would be unable to comply. I know they love my brother too much, and even if they've realized by now that it was all his lies, I know they'll never put him through what they did to me. My brother sent me a nasty text message today after my parents tried to call me again and I refused to answer. This is what he wrote. "Hey sis, I haven't seen you in a long time, and I can tell you that every day without you has been wonderful. I heard mom and dad contacted you and you offered them a strange ultimatum. You're aware that they will never go through with it, right? They plainly never loved you and will never hurt me. I admit I lied about you 15 years ago, but it's been a long time, so stop being so self-centered and attempt to move on from the past. You're unmarried and childless, so why not help them out by paying for their home repairs and renovations? Do the right thing and become a better daughter. Seeing the message felt like a stab in the chest. The hubris to reject the difficulties I had encountered and the conditions I had established revealed his lack of empathy. The attempt to guilt-trip me by emphasizing my single and childless situation added an extra degree of insensitivity. His idea that I should prioritize their needs over my own was not only disrespectful, but also demonstrated how little he valued me. Fueled by dissatisfaction and a strong desire for justice, I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands and expose the truth that had been buried for far too long. I sat down to compose an email to my parents and close relatives, detailing the traumatic events of my upbringing and the unfair treatment I had received while growing up in my family home. In the email, I highlighted the tight and restrictive environment I encountered at home, as well as how my parents treated me differently from my twin brother. I also looked into the spiteful and utterly false rumor my brother had circulated about me at school, which had resulted in serious consequences and ruined my image. I wrote about how my parents had kicked me out and if it hadn't been for my grandmother, I could have died on the streets by now. Toward the conclusion, I requested that everyone read a message my brother had sent me. I've enclosed a screenshot in which he acknowledged lying about me. It was a simple confession, and I hoped it would reveal the lies that had lasted for too long. I sent the email just an hour ago, and I know what will happen when my parents and brother see it. Next, I'll let you know how my family reacts to my email. Update. It's been a month since my previous update, and a lot has happened. As you may guess, my family erupted when they received the email. My parents have faced criticism from relatives who were previously unaware of the extent of their favoritism and emotional abuse. Many family members contacted me, saying they had no idea about everything and apologized for not being there for me. My brother and dad sent me a bombardment of text messages that became increasingly hostile and aggressive. So I contacted a lawyer, who issued them a cease and desist notice. It basically told them not to approach me again, and if they did, they would face severe legal penalties. I guess this spooked them since they stopped calling me. My grandmother believes I did the right thing by telling everyone what occurred, and she fully supports me. She is the only person who is important to me, therefore I'm delighted she has my back. Update. It's been 2 months since my last post, and I'm pleased to say that everything is going well in my life right now. Professionally, my article writing business has thrived. Invitations to speak at seminars and podcasts continue to come in, confirming my status as a renowned expert in my field. I'm as close to my granny as ever. I recently took a 1-week sabbatical from work to spend quality time with her. She is into gardening these days and has taught me a lot about the many flowers and herbs in her yard. My favorite and most cherished memories are of spending time with her, whether we were sharing meals, having profound conversations, or simply enjoying one another's company. My family hasn't contacted me since they received the letter from my lawyer, so I'm glad they're staying away. Personally, I've started attending to therapy in the hopes of working on my own recovery. For the time being, I believe this is the final update. Thank you very much for your support. My parents believed a girl's false accusation and hurt my brother. I escaped a toxic home and fought for custody to live with my brother. I, 14M, have wanted to tell this story for a long time. Please be patient as this is a long narrative. I understand it sounds like a lie, but believe me, I want it to be. This has damaged my family, and I am not permitted to discuss it since my parents want to forget what they did. So, just to be safe, I'm sharing this from my friend's brother's Reddit account. My parents had both lost spouses before meeting. My father split from my older sister Lucy's mother, now 25 years old, and my mother lost her ex-husband in a vehicle accident, forcing her to care for my brother, currently 23 years old. They were both single parents with custody of their children. They met on the beach, exchanged numbers, began dating and were married 2 years later. Let's get into the story. It all began when I was 8 years old and my brothers were 17 and 19. My brother Kirby was in his 3rd year of high school and my sister worked at a grocery store near our home. My parents and sister worked, so I stayed with Kirby. It may seem strange, but the best times of my life occurred when Kirby was with me. I understand that many older brothers do not get along with their younger siblings, but this was not the case for us. I loved Kirby with all my heart, and I know he loved me as well. He always looked after me, played with me, studied with me, and occasionally took the blame for me. One day after school, I waited for Kirby in front of my school. He often came to pick me up because our schools were close. But this time was different. He did not arrive. I waited until 4 p.m., when my sister arrived to pick me up. I asked about my brother, but she didn't respond. She simply dodged the conversation. When we got home, I was stunned by the sound of things breaking in the house and my parents' terrified shouts. When we entered the house, the situation could not have been worse. Kirby was on the floor while my father kicked and threw dishes at him, and my mother screamed horrific words at him. I was so terrified that I refused to leave my sister's side. She escorted me upstairs and instructed me not to leave the room till further notice. I remained there, listening and crying. I had never seen my family like that before, and I am still terrified of them, no matter how old I am. Suddenly, I heard sirens. When I peeked out the window, I noticed 2 vehicles and numerous police officers exiting and entering the residence. A short while later, I heard more shouts and the voice of an officer proclaiming an arrest. I witnessed my father and mother being forced into a police van. My parents screamed and cursed at my brother. At 2:04, my parents screamed nasty things at my brother, calling him a disgusting worm who deserved to die. My mother has always agreed. I went downstairs after they were put in the car at 2:10 p.m., and it was terrifying. Lucy was crying on the floor as Kirby held her in his arms. He was thoroughly bloodied and bruised. After that scene, everything was a blur. I only recall being inside an ambulance in the hospital. It was more like a dream, but my sister disagrees, claiming it was a nightmare and the worst day of her life. About 3 days later, my parents were still in jail for assault and attempted murder. So my sister took a few days off to care for me. Finally, I mustered the confidence to ask my sister what had transpired. Lucy, the first person to ever treat me as an adult, told me the truth. Our brother Kirby was accused of rape by a girl in high school. The girl went to the principal, crying and battered, and accused Kirby of abusing her. Our parents and the girl's parents were summoned to school, and the police were also engaged. Kirby explained to our parents that he did not do that, but they refused to listen and instead supported the girl. So when the police stated they would investigate and do tests, Kirby and the daughter were free to return home. Then something happened. My brother is now in the hospital and he is at risk of developing serious physical difficulties as a result of the abuse. The next day, the police summoned my sister to the police station, where she was required to accompany me. But what they told us was alarming, to say the least. Karen appears to be the girl who filed the report. Karen, if you see this, please know that you are the most horrible person I know. I hope you burn in hell, bastard. You have devastated our life. You filed a bogus report since she and Kirby despised each other at school. And after another fight between the two, she injured herself and planned to claim he hit her. However, the plot evolved to a rape in the hopes that she might expel my brother from school. However, she made a mistake and told her pals about it on a video call, causing them to chuckle. What she didn't expect was for everyone to turn against her, with the exception of her best friend, who had been sexually abused as a child and was never believed until lately. Karen's former closest friend went to the police station, told them everything, and managed to videotape some of the conversation. After the piranha confessed, the cops questioned Karen. And for fear of being arrested, she spoke the truth. My sister was pissed off. She wanted to kill Karen at the time, but the police talked her down, telling her that Karen's parents would have to pay a fee for the false charge and defamation. My sister thought it was fine, but not sufficient. When we returned home, our parents were present. And as soon as my sister spotted them, she exploded, shouting about everything that had transpired at the police station. They listened in silence, becoming more startled with each sentence. My mother was already in tears by the time my sister finished, and my body remained paralyzed. Then he did the worst thing. He said, "Are you sure about this?" That was the worst use of words I've ever heard. Lucy delivered a lengthy lecture on how they were awful parents for believing in that circumstance without any proof. And my father tried to rationalize that the girl's words were really valuable. But my sister did not contest it, claiming that without evidence, words were meaningless. I understand that many raped persons are labeled as liars when their allegations are unproven, but this instance is different. Karen lied and fooled everyone for petty reasons. I hope you can understand. My father was defeated and the home was silent for several days. It was not the same without Kirby. He was the soul of the house. He was kind and friendly to practically everyone. He always provided us joy. I still don't understand how my folks were so easily seduced by Karen. I despise them for that, and I will never forgive them for their actions. Kirby awoke after a long time, only to find himself in horrible health. To give you an idea, his jaw was fractured, he lost 60% vision in one eye, his arm and wrist were broken, his ribs were severely wounded, and he narrowly avoided puncturing his lung. His leg was so severely wounded that he would never be able to walk normally again without assistance. It also caused him to experience post-traumatic stress disorder, sadness, and anxiety. My brother was never the same. He is still in serious pain and requires a lot of controlled medicine. He didn't talk for weeks, and when he took out the gadget that held his jaw in place, it didn't change much. He only responded when we asked a question. When he was hungry, he didn't say anything and he frequently burst into tears. I believe it was due to the trauma. I wanted to hug him, but his injuries were so terrible that it was dangerous. My parents tried to visit my brother several times. My mother begged and my father tried to push us to accept them. But my sister prohibited them since she knew my brother didn't want to see our parents. And she told them that, but it wasn't sufficient. My mother was unable to visit him one day due to work, but my parents viewed this as a chance to pay my brother a secret visit. I believe their thoughts would be something like this. Let's go see our son, apologize, he accepts, we'll be fine, and we'll be one big happy family again. What a big mistake. As soon as they entered the room, my brother let out the biggest scream I'd ever heard from him. Soon, physicians and nurses entered the room to try to calm my brother down. He commanded, "Get them out of here. They're murderers. They have come to kill me. Please take them out of here," Kirby yelled out, and then fainted out from tension. Of course, following that, my parents were banned and barred from visiting Kirby. Only my sister and I were allowed to see him. My mother sobbed all night and my father blamed our brother, claiming he was exaggerating. Kirby was released from the hospital after months of physical and mental recuperation. My parents had the guts to invite him home. However, Kirby replied, "I would not return to this house even if it were the last location on earth. I am now motherless. I hope you both pay for what you've done to me." Kirby moved to live with his paternal grandparents, who had no idea of the circumstances before then. They took preventive precautions against our parents. He welcomed my sister and me to visit him at any time, and we did. In fact, I spent more time with him than my parents at home. The final straw came during a family party, when we discovered that my father had lied to our entire family. He informed them that Kirby had dropped out of school to live in a drug-infested environment and had fled home, taking his belongings and the money they were saving for my college. But my parents didn't earn that money. Kirby and Lucy were the ones who raised it for my tuition. Kirby had done several odd jobs and was now saving because he believed I deserved a better future. My sister and I were furious. We informed our family the whole truth and they were startled and unhappy with our parents. My paternal grandparents were the only ones who supported my parents, saying, "It's human to err," and that they had done nothing wrong. They claimed my parents were simply ashamed of their deeds. But no one else agreed. The rest of the family left my parents and proceeded to apologize to Kirby. Fun fact, the next day, Kirby contacted me, perplexed. He wondered why folks he hadn't spoken with in months suddenly came to apologize to him. Karen's parents arrived at our home a year after the incident occurred. They inquired whether Kirby was home, and when we responded no, they apologized for what had transpired before leaving. Later I learned that they had come to offer Kirby compensation, giving him all of the money intended for Karen's college and automobile. My brother thanked them but stated, "I haven't forgiven Karen and never will. If she ever appears in front of me, I'll tell her some unpleasant realities." Karen's parents accepted his statement and departed. My older brother is doing much better right now, although he is still not completely cured. He still has nightmares about that day, which regularly trigger anxiety attacks. Someone should go to him and calm him down. I want to be there for him, help him, and get away from the toxic world we live in. That is why I have opted to move in with Kirby initially. I spoke with my brother. He was hesitant at first, but eventually accepted the idea and told his grandparents, who consented. I also chatted with Lucy, who felt it was an excellent idea. However, when I spoke with my parents, the tale was completely different. My mother burst into tears, and my father got hysterical, claiming that everyone had already abandoned them and that his youngest son would do the same. I became upset and informed him that I had already abandoned him that fateful afternoon and that he would never accept me back. My father, a guy in his 50s who had always said that sobbing was for sissies, began wailing like a baby. He explained that he had already lost everything and did not want to lose me as well. I couldn't bear the situation, so I left the house and went to a friend's house to vent. My friend admonished me, telling me that I shouldn't forsake my parents like that. His older brother, Steve, the creator of this Reddit account, interfered and begged him to quiet up, claiming he knew nothing. Steve informed me his brother had a poor mind and pushed me to seek further viewpoints. He introduced me to Reddit and suggested that I post my question here. So gentlemen, what should I do? Update 1. Well, a lot has happened since my initial post here. I had a question, but I'd like to thank everyone for helping me make up my mind. Thank you so much for your encouraging words, and thank you to Steve, the owner of this account, for his support as well. Let's get started. I ended up fleeing my home since my parents banned me from leaving. I waited until they went together to go shopping, something they frequently did without me because they treated me like a child and assumed I'd just beg them to purchase stuff. However, this time, they pushed me to join them, which threw off my plans. I opted to pack the essentials in a backpack, along with some snacks to keep me going. As soon as we were to the market, I wanted to use the restroom. Fortunately, my parents were so preoccupied with how the price of food had risen that my father simply instructed me to leave and return shortly. Plot twist, I did not come back. I dashed out of the market and boarded the bus closest to Kirby's grandparents' home. When I arrived, Kirby's grandma welcomed me and encouraged me to relax while I waited for Kirby and his grandfather to return home. When they arrived, I informed them what had transpired, including what I had posted on Reddit. My brother's reaction was not what I was expecting. He stated it was highly irresponsible of me to flee, that it was risky, and that something terrible could have happened. It may sound strange, but I enjoy it when he scolds me. Unlike our parents, he genuinely cares about me. I could be gone for 3 days and they would not notice. In truth, it had happened previously. They simply became enraged when they discovered this. I took the scolding well and asked if I could stay. My sibling commented, "You will come back here even if I send you back to their house, so you better stay." I was overjoyed and hugged him. His grandparents were likewise thrilled with my brother's decision, but my elation faded when he said that I would have to contact my parents. I resisted, knowing they would come for me, but my brother insisted, saying, "They are responsible for you, and if you don't tell them, they can call the police and claim that I kidnapped you and am holding you hostage." I hesitantly called my mother. She barely responded before she began yelling at me and asked where I was. When I told her, they became even angrier, ranting in such a harsh alien tone that everyone around me could hear. I could have stood there and listened to them yell, but I hung up when I noticed Kirby was becoming uncomfortable. Following the aggression, he developed a sensitivity to yelling. He cursed his parents for what they had done to him. I became enraged and threatened to take me by force, but my brother responded, "They are aggressive but not idiots. They are aware that I have a protective order against them. If they approach, we'll call the cops." How mistaken he was. An hour and a half later, they were knocking on the front door, yelling and screaming at my brother for future generations. Kirby's grandparents urged them to leave or they'd contact the cops. This simply made them angry, so they returned to hammering on the door. I wanted to walk down and tell them to go, but Kirby needed me. I had to pull him back because he wanted to confront them and express his fury in person. He harbors a lot of resentment towards them. He even stated once that he intended to kill them slowly and horribly. I agree with the sentiment, but I do not believe he should get his hands filthy with them. Then they burst down the door and began wrecking the house in search of me. At that point, I decided to go downstairs and dismiss them. I was trying to calm my brother down by asking him to stay in the room while I handled the problem. My mother let out the greatest scream I'd ever heard, and my father went silent. After persuading my brother to remain in the room, I went downstairs, and the situation could not have been more gloomy. My father was sprawled on the floor, shivering, while my mother stood over him, screaming and calling out to him in vain. I noticed that Kirby's grandfather was clutching a taser. I believe we all know what occurred, right? When my mother saw me, she screamed, "Look what they did to your father, call the police. They should be arrested." I replied that if I called the police, she and my father would be arrested for violating the protective order. She ignored me and kept screaming, insisting that we call an ambulance for my father. We disregarded her, suggesting that once my father healed they should leave and never return. When my father finally returned to his senses, he was unusually silent, defeated and beaten. My brother quickly appeared downstairs. My mother instantly assaulted him verbally, resulting in a heated argument. She began blaming him for everything, claiming he was the reason all of our family had abandoned her and that her children had turned their backs on her. She blamed herself, claiming that she was an innocent woman who went to church every Sunday and did not deserve to go through this. I'm not sure what she meant by it. Nobody would feel sorry for her simply because of that. Kirby remained mute throughout her screaming crises, but she eventually crossed the line. She stated that he was meant to apologize to them for destroying their lives and inform everyone in the family that he had forgiven them. That was the limit. Kirby, furious, slapped her so hard that she tumbled on the ground. My mother began screaming again, but Kirby told her to stop or he would crush her teeth with the base of the cane. He screamed, letting out everything he'd been holding in for years, how unhappy they were, how they dug their own graves, and how they didn't deserve anyone around them. He further stated that when they died, he would make a point of peeing on their coffins. My mother became enraged and attempted to punch Kirby, but I shoved her against the wall. She began ranting at me as well, claiming I would go to hell for abandoning her and referring to me as a dirty lesbian who would also go to hell. For perspective, I am bisexual, and I made the mistake of informing my parents. Surprisingly, my father was fine with it, but my mother was furious, claiming I was destined and even forbidding me to be bisexual. She introduced me to her church friends' daughters, which made them uneasy. The strange thing is, when I told my brother, he just remarked, "So, you give me a nephew? Let's stay cool." My brother then began demanding them to leave and pay for the damage they had done to the house, or we would file a complaint. My mother laughed, stating that I wouldn't have the bravery to report my own mother. I replied, "What I have most is courage, and I would have the satisfaction of seeing you arrested again." She made excuses, claiming we didn't have proof, but my brother shut her down, pointing out that we had fingerprints, video evidence, and even footage from security cameras. It took her a long time to accept defeat, but they eventually left. But my brother wanted to add one more jab. As my mother entered the car, Kirby exclaimed, "Hey, I wish you could have died in my father's place." In response, she flashed him the middle finger and screamed as she climbed into the car, making my brother laugh, a triumph laugh, as if he had just won a long round of his favorite video game. Soon later, our sister called to say our mother had informed her she had been assaulted by Kirby and needed to bring me home to fix me. My sister, on the other hand, expressed her pride in me for standing up to them and joked that Kirby should have broken the cane over their heads. Now I'm living with my brother, as I've always desired, and it's been amazing. He's determined to acquire custody of me and has threatened our parents to give it to him in any manner. My mother is resolute, stating that she will not leave me with an abuser. She presumably thinks I am bisexual because my brother molested me. How crazy is that? I believe it is only a matter of waiting for her to succumb. For the time being, everything appears to be proceeding as planned. I had a passionate talk with my brother before he fell asleep. He was thinking about what life might be like if his father was still living. I informed him that his life could have been a little better. But he said, maybe. Maybe not. If he hadn't died, I might not have experienced the aggression, but I wouldn't have my two angels in my life. Then he kissed my forehead. I must confess, that was very lovely. I hugged him. I adore him, and I am confident that we will always defend each other. Thank you to everyone who has supported me. I hope nobody has to go through what we did. For those who feel our narrative is untrue, I wish it were. I wanted us to be a good family that accepts and protects one another regardless of the circumstances. However, this can only occur in my dreams. See you folks, maybe I'll update with the outcome of the procedure, so see you then. Update 2. Hello everyone, thank you very much for your support. Believe me, I am fine, and my brother is better, but fine is insufficient for him. He wants my custody at any means and is pursuing my parents with everything he has. Well, I wouldn't be here just to say we're fine, so let's get to the point. We were enjoying a peaceful afternoon when there was a knock on the door, which had already been repaired by a friend of Kirby's grandfather. I went to answer it, but was astonished to see my father present. I immediately sent him away, but he said that he simply wanted to communicate and didn't want to make a fuss. I told him to **** off and that we would only communicate in court. However, my father insisted and Kirby's grandparents threatened to contact the police. To our amazement, Kirby said to let him in. We questioned him, but Kirby simply stated that my father was a pushy moron who would not go easily, so it was best to allow him in and get it over with. So we let him in, but we were prepared in case he became aggressive. Kirby sat at the kitchen table and we all remained in the kitchen for protection. Kirby's grandmother was recording the conversation to provide additional evidence that my father was violating the provisional measure. The conversation went as follows. Kirby responded, "Very brave of you to come back here after all you've done. My dad. I'm sorry, I swear I'll pay for all the damage." Kirby. Pay? Of course you believe you can solve anything with money, correct? But I am not talking about tangible stuff, which are replaceable. What you accomplished for me was priceless. Father, I know. I apologize. I promise I will give my life to travel back in time. I'd do everything differently. Kirby. Yeah, but you can't travel back in time. The damage is already done. You devastated me. You destroyed your family. Father, but there was an accident. If you had told us from the start, things may have been different. Kirby says, more lies. You did not want to listen to me. Do you understand what you did to me? You made me feel unworthy of living. You've made me want to die. Do you have any concept of how that feels? No, because you are the aggressor, and the aggressor will never feel the victim's terror. Son of a B***********. Kirby began to cry at that point, but it was a cry of wrath and bitterness that he had suppressed for many years. My father continued to apologize in vain, but my brother claimed that his sole motivation was to feel better about himself, not to sincerely regret what he had done. However, my father continued to apologize. To the point where my brother issued his ultimatum, despite the fact that he was on the verge of another anxiety attack. Kirby asks, do you want forgiveness? Here's what we plan to do. You are going to grant me custody of my brother. You'll pay his child support, and you'll never try to get close to me, him, or anybody else again. Or else I will make your days a miserable hell. My father agreed immediately. I'll tell you, I don't feel sorry for him, but I've never seen him so defeated as he was at that point. I believe the shock of his deeds finally hit him hard, but I feel no sympathy for him. He deserves it. He deserves to feel the pain he has caused our family. He left shortly after, stating he was going to try to persuade my mother to relinquish custody of me. He too appealed for forgiveness, but I simply ignored him. My brother burst into tears the moment he went out the door. I believe his courage had gone at that point. He began crying and collapsed to his knees on the floor, hyperventilating and sweating cold. We escorted him into his room so he could lie down. We offered him anxiety medication, but it didn't seem to help. I contacted my sister and explained all that had transpired. She arrived instantly, and we all remained in the room, attempting to calm him down. My sister repeatedly told my brother that he was one of the bravest persons she knew. Despite his anxiety, he was brave enough to remain in the same room with our father, his abuser, and, as he called it, his murderer. After several hours, my brother finally calmed down and fell asleep. Lucy and I slept in his room just in case he had nightmares afterwards. But of course, nothing can end like that. My mother called us many hours later, inquiring what that demon Kirby had done to her husband. She accused my brother of having captivated her sweet hubby, and claimed he now wanted to give everything to Kirby. My sister simply ordered her to **** off, noting that at least one of them had come to their senses. So I hope everything works out and my mother finally comes to her senses and does the right thing. Thank you so much for everyone's support, especially Steve, who owns this account and has always been there for me since I first told my tale. While I'm gone, I'll give updates if anything changes. See you later. If you're asking why I use phony identities, it's to preserve my brother's privacy. I do not want their life to be invaded. Update 3. Hello everyone, it's been a while. You deserve the most recent update and I can say I'm overjoyed that it's finally finished. It's truly over, I'm free of that place and those people. In my last report, I said that my mother did not want to give up custody of me. My father threatened her in every way imaginable, but she did not care. She stated that she would never abandon me and would go to any length to reclaim my trust. So since she wouldn't give in, we turned to psychological pressure. We told everyone in our family what had transpired and how my brother wanted custody of me. The relatives knew, and they attacked my mother directly, claiming that it was the least she and my father could do to make amends for the past. However, my mother barred all of our relatives, claiming that my brother had charmed them. Typical. A week after I moved in with Kirby, she called. Karen stated, "I'll give you two options. You're going to come home without complaining and we'll forget all this, or you're going to stay there and suffer the consequences." I refused to succumb to her demands. I informed her that even if my brother died, he would not return to that house. So she hung up with me. I called to inform Kirby because I was concerned that she would do something damaging to him. He assured me not to worry, and that if anything happened he'd notify me. Then it occurred. The police knocked on our neighbor's door, an older lady who is quite nice. The police were summoned in response to an alleged accusation of child abuse at our residence. However, when they learned they were in the incorrect residence, they hurriedly left. I pulled things together. My mother had phoned the cops. But she's gone so far that she misplaced our address, directing the police to the wrong residence. Hours later, my mother called to suggest she could withdraw the complaint provided I went home without a fuss. Of course, I told her to go to hell and hung up. My brother apologized to the neighbor for what transpired. Then he decided that since my mother wanted to play dirty, we should play dirty too. We utilized our final weapon, our maternal grandma, the person my mother despises more than my brother. It was tough to get her contact information since, sadly, our grandma despises me and my sister for reasons we cannot control. It was tough to get her contact information since, sadly, our grandma despises me and my sister just because we are our father's children. Yes, she is the traditional grandma who has a favorite grandson, in our case Kirby, which provided us an unfair advantage. We eventually discovered her after searching for her phone number or address. So my brother called her and told her about everything, from the assault to our current situation. When asked if she could help my brother, Grandma's sole response was that she would be here as quickly as possible. And believe me, she arrived in our city an hour and 30 minutes later, which was okay because my brother had simply asked her to call my mother. And she agreed to the bargain and went straight to my parents' place for a surprise visit, which my mother absolutely despises. She called me and Lucy and asked if my brother had anything to do with it, which we disregarded. Her reaction was even enjoyable. Our grandma was purposefully driving our parents insane, and they couldn't fight back because, as I know, my mother is greedy, and my grandmother owns a large plot of property that, if sold, could provide for someone for a long time. That's true, my parents are not only fools and psychopaths, but also greedy. I believe my brother must have married into the wrong family since it is simply inconceivable. And after 2 weeks of misery for our parents, my mother finally asks when she'll leave. She stated that she would only go if my mother relinquished custody of me, with which my mother disagreed. She wanted our grandmother to depart, so she played the final card. Either my mother would relinquish custody of me, or she was entirely out of will, son and money. Guess which one won? So we went to court, and if looks could kill, my parents would have already been buried. The judge became agitated as he recounted the events of the past, wondering how my parents escaped justice so easily. Unfortunately, in today's world, money is more valuable than a person's sins. My father even hid his face, but my mother was there, unconcerned, convinced that she had done nothing wrong. I believe the most stressful moment was when Kirby and my mother confronted each other. Believe me, if you were there and seen the stares they gave each other, it was scary. I sometimes forget that these two once lived together. My mother may appear regular and friendly, but she is deceptive and manipulative. If you do or say something she disagrees with, you are perceived as a threat and heavily reprimanded for it. My brother, on the other hand, is so open-minded that it nearly scares me. He can make friends with just about anyone. If you see a young man with a cane and smiling and waving, it's probably my brother. So why can't I grasp how these two contradicting beings share the same body? Returning to the process, it was both complicated and speedy. After all, my parents were unwilling to fight for me, so our lawyer reached an agreement in which I would live with my brother and my parents would be required to pay a very significant alimony. My mother questioned why they had to pay child support since I was now my brother's responsibility, but my father and grandmother advised her to shut up and accept the deal. We eventually obtained it after a long and stressful process. Now I can live with my brother and they will have no control over me. I erased my parents' contact information exactly 30 minutes after receiving the results. I don't need it anymore. They will now become a part of the past that I would like to forget. But wait. There's more. Our granny had an epiphany before she went. My mother had never been mentioned in the will. Our grandmother took her away soon after she married my father. It was even funnier. She essentially swapped it for something she'll never have. My brother is the only person mentioned in her will, which is fantastic in my opinion. Our brother Kirby got all he wanted and deserved. I'm not sure if I call it divine justice or whatever, but he deserved it, and we couldn't be happier about it. I'd like to thank everyone on Reddit and the owner of this account. I'm glad you helped and guided me during this difficult time in my life. And now there's a happy ending. Even more personally, I hope I won't have to return here until absolutely necessary. My ex-girlfriend opened up 2 credit cards in my name after we broke up. She ran up about $7,500 in debt, and her current boyfriend is now threatening me. Original post. My ex and I broke up a little more than a year ago. We lived together for a couple of years and I know she would have had access to my financial information. When we broke up, I moved out of the house we were renting and I thought I had everything of mine. Back in February when I was doing my taxes, I realized I could not find my folder with my previous year's tax returns anywhere. I assumed it got lost in the move and didn't think anything else of it. Last Friday, I got served for a lawsuit to the tune of over $5,000 for a defaulted credit card. When I went and actually pulled my credit, I saw that card had been defaulted since May and there was another one which had been closed since June for about $2,500. Seeing as I had no knowledge about this, I immediately disputed both of the accounts on all three bureaus' websites. I was able to talk with someone for one of the cards and they said it was opened in January, well after I had moved out of my old house, and the cards were sent there. I received the statements from the one card and it was probably 80% Nordstrom Macy's, two of the stores my ex loved shopping at. Pretty sure she was the one who opened the accounts, probably used my social security number from the old tax returns. I called my ex about it and she denied everything, even when I told her that eventually, if she had anything shipped to the house using a stolen credit card, she's going to get found out. She flipped and started screaming at me saying I can't seriously accuse her of anything and to never talk to her again. About 20 minutes later I get a call from a blocked number. It was her boyfriend threatening to make my life a living hell unless I stopped harassing her by claiming she stole my identity. He hung up but I was shaken up about it. I can see he's got some serious felonies just by looking at the public records on the county website. I'm kind of stuck here. I'm opening myself up to retaliation if I go forward with anything from someone who has charges of aggravated arson and aggravated discharge of a firearm, in addition to a few battery charges. I can't just not do anything though. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Relevant comments. Commenter. Copying this for every identity theft situation I see on here, since it seems to happen a lot, where you know who the person is who stole your identity. This is all information you can find in this sub and others. 1. Call the police. You're the victim of identity theft, plain and simple. It doesn't matter who did it or what your relationship is to them. They broke the law. Now they have to face the consequences of their actions. 2. Freeze your credit. You want to make sure it doesn't happen again, take the proactive route of freezing your credit. 3. Monitor and track your credit. You need to be alerted if anyone tries opening a line of credit in your name. This gives you a way to do it for free and it shows your credit score. 4. Warn anyone else who might be a victim. This includes family members or anyone else whose social security number might be compromised by the thief. 5. Take the police report to the credit bureaus. Give them the report number when you dispute all of the accounts. Most of the time, that will be enough for them to take the accounts off of your credit. It's on the creditors themselves to prove the accounts are legitimately yours and the bureaus aren't going to get in the middle of it. A police report goes a long way in clearing up your credit. Don't take identity theft lying down, even if it's someone close to you. If you let them get away with it, get ready for 5-10 years of bad credit, collection agencies coming after you, lawsuits, etc. For this specific case, you need to go to the police like now. This guy seems like an incredibly violent person. I would get a restraining order as soon as possible. Does he know where you live? I also would not contact your ex at all about anything else. Let it all go through the court system. OOP. I plan on calling the police. I was just kind of freaked out about the whole situation. How do I get the police report to the credit companies? Commenter 2. File a police report for the fraud. Contact the lenders and provide the police report number and jurisdiction. Let the police bank sort it out. Provide all that info to the lawyers that filed the suit and bring it all to court. Do not skip a court date. Update. I followed the advice in the comments and went to the police. Quick and painless process, I was in and out in maybe 30 minutes with a report number. I never received another call from my ex or her BF. I gave the report number to the credit card companies and the credit bureaus. I was told I didn't have to do anything else at that point but to show up to the court date for the lawsuit. I learned through a mutual friend today that my ex was arrested this morning. Apparently the county put out a warrant for her last week, pulled her over on the way to work. It looks like she was charged and released pretty quickly. Also, I learned my ex and the BF who threatened me are no longer together. I don't think I have to worry about him anymore. The court date for the lawsuit is later this month but everything has already fallen off my report. My score has gone up probably 200 points. I'm still going to the court date just to make sure everything is good, but it's looking like all good news from here on out. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. That's awesome news. Your story will also serve as inspiration for others to pursue justice when they've been wronged. Commenter 2. Make sure you put a freeze on your SSN with all 3 credit bureaus, if you haven't done so already. My church banned our young worship leader for condemning Christian nationalism during a service. Other band members want to walk out. Original post. My church's youth group has a youth band that leads worship during youth, but the church also has them lead worship on Sunday mornings every few weeks, to promote the youth band when the usual worship team has a week off. I'm not in the band, but I often help with lyric PowerPoints along with another girl, but not when the band plays on Sundays. The main singer of the youth band is the daughter of a youth assistant, and the daughter is an assistant too. We'll call her Emma, she's 20. I'm writing because of what happened the last time the youth band led Sunday worship on 6/30. That led to Emma and her family leaving the church. In between one of the songs, Emma said she felt led to say that Christian nationalism wasn't of God, because forcing people to believe went against the basis of Christianity because God gave free will and too many Christians forgot that. She also said there would be no short and narrow path if people were forced to walk it, before saying Project 2025 was advertised as Christian but resembled nothing of God, because God never forced people to believe in Him. No one confronted her or anything, as it was brief, and they played a few more songs along with the closing song after the pastor finished his sermon. But when we got to youth on Friday night, Emma and her mother weren't there. And we were later informed, by the youth pastor, that Emma and her mom would no longer be helping the youth before a bunch of stuff about giving others the chance to be lead singers because Emma had left the church. However, word got out from one of the band's players that Emma told the band that she got banned during the week and that her parents left the church with her, so they already knew before we found out at youth. The reason I'm making this post is because of a conversation I had with the band and other PowerPoint girl. The same Friday the youth pastor announced it, and the conversation was private from the rest of the kids. Long story short, the band is upset about what happened to Emma, and they've been throwing around ideas on what to do. The one they're heavily considering is a walkout the next time they're scheduled to play on Sunday after playing the intro song. Service opens with an intro song before someone comes on stage to welcome everyone before worship continues, and they would voice support for Emma before walking out together. They haven't told anyone not associated with the band because they don't want anyone to spill the deets. But the main thing we're debating is repercussions from our parents and whether or not it's worth the risk. There's likely a few weeks until the band plays on Sunday again, and they still haven't decided on a new lead singer yet. I also want to add that the church didn't upload the worship portion of the service with Emma and only uploaded the sermon from that day. They always include worship on their YouTube upload of the service. Most of the concerns were around tuition punishments, as some of them have their parents helping pay, but they still want to do something. And while I'm not in the band technically, aside from coordinating PowerPoint lyrics occasionally, I figured the least I could do was get advice from other adults anonymously, because we don't want to ask our parents for obvious reasons, and maybe others could see more pros and cons that we can. I appreciate any advice that anyone gives and will relay it to the band too. Thanks to anyone who read this too. Edit. I forgot to add this detail in my post, but the pastor of our church has used the pulpit to speak politics in the past and has even mentioned support of a presidential candidate on numerous occasions, along with other political topics on occasion too, Roe v. Wade and gay rights. So while I agree that politics probably shouldn't be spoken in church, some of the band said that Emma was tired of the often political topics being brought up during sermons, thus why she said what she said. First update. I want to thank to everyone who commented on my original post, because it was way more than I expected, and many of you had really helpful advice. This is a small update with some really surprising things that happened since. First, the band is still going through with the walkout, and they're keeping it within the band so that no other kids tell their parents who might tell leaders. It would have been awesome to include others, but the risk of the church catching wind was too great. Second, we have a date of 8/4 when the youth band will do worship for the adults again. Third, the youth pastor appointed a singer from within the group who will take turns singing on Sundays with future participants in the coming weeks. Fourth, the new singer agreed that the church's handling of Emma was BS. Fifth, and most exciting, 2 of the band members told non-religious relatives about the situation and fear of punishment, and they agreed to come to the service and let them head to their cars in the parking lot straight from the walkout, for safety. They won't leave the lot in case some parents try to claim kidnapping, but will be in their cars if all goes well, and the rest of us are going to ask our relatives too. Sixth, One of the band members told a teacher they knew from school who's thinking about coming and walking out too. And 7th, one of the band members wrote a little something that the lead singer will read before they walk off stage, and it would be great if anyone with editing experience could help to make it clearer or provide advice on what to add. They tried to keep it short. I will make a post about their write-up in the near future. Here's how we hope it happens. The band will play the opening song, which officially starts service, and usually lets people know it's starting. Many make their way from the foyer during the intro song. And after someone gives the welcome prayer after the opening song, the lead singer will then give the speech before the band walks off stage, and I will walk out with them from the pews along with relatives' friends. One relative said she might bring some people she knows too, which could make more of a statement to the church to see adults leaving too. One of the relatives will also record the whole thing in case any parents don't react well to it, and I will update after it happens. If anyone has any further advice, it would be appreciated, and I'll bring it to the band. Most of the band, outside of 2 seniors, aren't old enough to vote this year, but this is a chance to stand up for what's right against something that is adamantly infusing itself into Christianity, Christian nationalism, and making Christianity lose all of its respect in our opinion. We don't expect change to happen in the church as a result of our walkout, but it's a small thing we can do to say we did our part when faced with it ourselves. Another commenter put it best when she asked if we'd be able to live with ourselves if we did nothing, and the answer has been no for us so far. I also want to add something I forgot to clarify in my first post. Emma didn't say what she did out of the blue. She had been vocal about the pastor talking politics for some time according to the band, and I've seen much of it too. However, a lot of people sent DMs disagreeing with the band's decision. So before I get into it, I want to give specifics of what the pastor has done. The pastor mentioned Trump from the pulpit numerous times, including the aftermath of the 2020 election, to voice discontent over the results. He has also celebrated Roe v. Wade's overturning from the pulpit, Pride Month during June, and even compared Trump's legal trial to how Jesus was persecuted leading up to his crucifixion. Things that have no place being vented about from the pulpit, and this has happened over the course of a few years. I received a few DMs in the aftermath of my first post, and some were encouraging while others not so much. A few people, who said they were Christians, said that Emma was wrong to use the microphone to hijack the service with her words because she should have talked to the pastor first while calling her actions immature. However, when I showed the band the advice from my posts, I also told them about the DMs, and they said that Emma spoke to a leader about the pastor's political sermons in the past. But nothing came from it as he continued to speak politics from the pulpit frequently. Some people also said that our walkout wasn't godly, because we, like Emma, would be hijacking the service for a publicity stunt when church was supposed to be about God. Some people called us immature, among harsher things. But we disagree for 2 reasons. First, who is supposed to call out the misuse of the pulpit if not people who attend the same church where it's misused? A few DMs said to do nothing and pray for God to change the pastor's heart, but he's been doing this for years. And second, the Bible gives guidance on how to call out improper behavior in the church in Matthew 18:15, 17. Dealing with sin in the church. 15. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the 2 of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. 16. But if they will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. 17. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church, and if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Emma has already talked to a leader one-on-one, and the band has voiced displeasure about Emma's ban to the youth pastor, only for him to disagree and say that Emma was out of line. Regarding the part about tell it to the church, I suppose the how might be up to interpretation. Maybe telling the church means telling a church leader instead of the congregation on stage. But Emma and the band have talked to various leaders, including an elder too, aside of our youth leader, only for years of political rants from the pulpit to continue. When Jesus flipped tables in Matthew 21:12, we believe he did it because people were using the temple to sell things that had nothing to do with God, and we believe that politics falls into the same boat. Someone commented a link in the comments of my first post that I never saw. But I showed the band and we couldn't agree with it more. I still plan to speak with my parents ahead of 8 quarters, and I'll share the write-up the band is working on really soon. I really appreciate everyone who commented too. Lastly, I want to clarify that the walkout is the band's decision entirely. I am not a member of the band, I just do PowerPoint lyrics during youth, and I'm not even in the band's group chat with Emma. As some of the band members are contemplating punishments from parents, two seniors who are concerned with their parents removing tuition help, I will support whatever they decide while understanding that they have to take care of their future too, as many commented. If they decide to continue with the walkout, I will support them and walk out from the pews. But if they change their mind because repercussions are too great, I will respect that and continue to support them. Second update. I meant to get back to this sooner, but some things happened on and after 8 quarters. Since my previous post, the band decided not go through with the walkout, and Emma was a big reason why. The band told me that Emma spoke to them a few days before 8 quarters after she spoke to another bandmate who voiced concern. The girl who spoke to Emma was 15 and confided in her about physical abuse fears from her parents, and Emma spoke to the band on behalf of those fears. Emma also referenced some of the fears that the senior bandmates had about losing tuition support and told them that it wasn't worth risking their futures. Emma, unlike the band, had a full-time job to support herself, but some of the band was still tied to their parents for years. She pretty much told them to go with their gut if they had fears about repercussions from their parents, as the 15-year-old girl had. And the senior who feared losing tuition said that his parents threatened him with it in the past about something else, which is why he thought of it. I wasn't present when the band spoke to Emma because I'm not a member of the band. I only do PowerPoint lyrics and they tell me what songs before youth group, but they told me and the other PowerPoint girl afterward. So instead of playing on 8 quarters, the band collectively, and privately, resigned to the youth pastor at youth group the Friday before 8 quarters, and none of them played on 8 quarters. They also told their parents that they would before doing so, and a few of the bandmates said they were never forced to join the youth band by their parents. They simply volunteered. But that didn't mean they weren't gonna say anything about Emma's treatment. They just wanted to in a safer environment that wouldn't risk embarrassing their parents in front of the congregation, which could cost them privileges. Instead, they decided to share their write-up with Emma, who was planning on posting her own explanation of her ban from the church. Emma posted her explanation along with the band's write-up to her socials on 8 quarters regarding why the band collectively resigned, and a few bandmates decided to repost it on their socials. Emma also tagged the church's social in her post and believed that the walkout would do more harm to the band than good, so the social media route was a slightly better alternative. Not as many people will see it, but we believe potential rumors and gossip might do their thing. A few of the bandmates also told their parents that they would no longer attend that specific church. And while a few of them argued with their parents, perhaps it was less than the would have been backlash of embarrassing them with a church walkout. The 15-year-old girl ended up attending church on 8 quarters, but the seniors didn't, although they ended up returning the following Sunday. None of them, including myself, have attended youth group since the Friday right before 8 quarters, and I didn't attend on 8 quarters either. 2 unexpected things also happened. I received a DM from someone who said that they were from a Christian news outlet. And while I never heard of their outlet before, they asked permission to share the band's story in one of their newsletters anonymously, not including the band's names or the churches, and the band said they'll pray on it and weigh the decision. Additionally, a pastor reached out in DMs and said that he was encouraged by their story. He also said that pastors were supposed to hold each other accountable and asked for the name of the church so that he could reach out pastor to talk, but Emma and the band are undecided on this at the moment. They said they're going to pray on it along with how it's important to make sure it's a real pastor and that no harm will come to the church, and I told the pastor that I'll get back to him. Emma also told the band that her parents haven't talked to her much since her church statements, and that's because of arguments that they had. Some people thought that Emma's parents left the church in support of their daughter getting banned, but that wasn't the case. Her parents were banned too, and Emma said they didn't appreciate being blindsided by Emma's statement and received some backlash for them. Emma still stands by everything she said, but they aren't talking at the moment. The last thing I'll say is about me and how I feel about everything, and I'll leave the band's statement from Emma's post afterward. This was the last straw in a long line of stuff for me from this particular church, but it goes further than that. I struggle to understand how parents can care more about church appearances more than the needs and desires of their kids, and I'm not talking about bad things. I'm talking about normal things, and Emma's statement said it better than I could. Emma said that God gave everyone free will, but the 15-year-old girl vented about physical abuse in regards to not wanting to go to church in the past, and that is the opposite of what God taught. God didn't force people to believe in Him, but some parents take away privileges if they refuse to fall in line with God and their church. I barely even have any friends myself, and I'm not even in the band group chat. The band told me everything secondhand and none of them are my friends. They hang out together outside of church, but I only have one other friend from church because I've been homeschooled for all of my life because my parents think public school is too secular. I can't even do official sports aside from sports played in the church field that our homeschool group uses, so I can't do leagues or be on any teams like high school. I just wish my parents would have let me go to school, but apparently they don't think their religion is strong enough for me to go to school and supposedly not lose my faith. Kinda like they've been keeping me on training wheels for 17 years. Personally, I need a break from church. I know not all churches are bad because the one I happen to grow up in is questionable, but I've decided I'm not a Christian because I said the salvation prayer when I was like 7 or 8, and I don't think that counts. You don't know what you believe at that age because all you have is heavy bias from your parents, and I need a break to be unbiased in the future after my pastor has made some questionable decisions in recent years, venting politics in the church like the people who sold things that weren't of God before Jesus flipped tables. I'm going to try and learn about other religions because Christianity is all I ever knew, so I've stopped considering myself a Christian internally of late. Doesn't mean I'll never return, but I need a long break from Christianity because just thinking of modern Christians makes me sick. Too much hate disguised as Christianity and political overlap. I know there's good ones, but I have to broaden my perspective. And without a long break, I won't be able to be non-biased in my search. I've also argued with my parents about how I'll no longer attend church, but this is getting too long. Some of the band has faced punishments for not going, and that is the epitome of what's wrong with their twisted version of Christianity, so I hope a break will help me reset in some ways. The band's statement talked about how they would no longer attend the church, but I'm not sure if their parents were the reason they returned on Sunday morning after 8 quarters. Regardless, here is the write-up that they shared with Emma, and it's longer than what they likely would have been allowed to say before the walkout if someone cut their microphone, which is an advantage of social media in this case. This is the band write-up that Emma posted alongside her explanation of how she was banned. As Christians, we are called to worship Jesus Christ. But how does one become a Christian? By making a choice no one else can make for us, but the last part is something too many Christians forget. Jesus never forced anyone to follow him. Joshua 24:15 tells us to choose whom we will serve. But many have forgotten the part about free will and believe that fusing religion with conservatism is the way. The sole purpose of Christianity is a personal relationship with God. It has nothing to do with Christian nationalism, and those who try to use our faith as an excuse to control others are false prophets. As Christians, we shouldn't judge others because we are not God. But since our church has banned Emma and lied to the youth about how she chose to leave, we can no longer play or remain in a church where the pastor uses the pulpit to preach other than the gospel, and we pray that the true Spirit of God returns someday. New update. Something has been bugging me recently that I need to get off my chest, and I will at the end. I have not attended church in a few weeks, and I hope I never do again. My parents aren't thrilled, and we've talked about it. They haven't forced me to come, but this situation was the last straw for me. Since my previous update, one of the senior bandmates called to see how I was, and he gave an update on what's been happening since Emma's post that featured their statement. The senior who called me, John will say, has started community college. The other senior whose parents threatened to withdraw tuition has not. That senior was punished for quitting the band. The senior who called me was not. The 15-year-old girl who replaced Emma as the lead singer was forced to return to church by her parents along with another boy who was in the band too. Emma remained in contact with the band after the post, and he briefed me on what's been happening with her. Emma encouraged the two seniors to find a new church. The senior who was punished said he wasn't interested and only attended church because his parents forced him for much of his life. He also said he wouldn't attend church in the future because he wasn't ever really religious to begin with. The senior who called me, and wrote most of the statement, said he was tired of church hypocrisy and that the situation made him never want to attend church again, instead opting to practice privately on his own. Emma was sad that the situation soured their opinion of church, but she was also not looking for a new church to take time to find herself. When John asked if I would look for a new church, I told him no, but wasn't too specific other than saying I was tired. I'm going to be more specific here because some things have really been bothering me. A lot of comments said that we gave them hope for future generations of Christianity. But just reading that pissed me off personally, and I'm going to be more blunt than my previous posts. Personally, I hate modern Christianity in this country. I know it's not God's fault that many Christians are so hateful these days. But my distaste goes years before this incident because I feel like I never had a childhood. I'm fucking homeschooled for all my life because my parents think public school is too secular. Don't have many friends besides one, and my social skills suck because my only exposure is Sunday service and youth group twice a week. They police what I wear because of purity, and they didn't even let me do sports or anything fun that kids do growing up. But more than that, I'm scared with no one to talk to. My parents based my entire life on a religious that has no proof of its existence whatsoever. And when I tried to voice my fears in the past, they say I should know better, which is not substantial evidence. What's gonna happen when my time on earth ends if there's no God or judgment day? All of my life would have been wasted on invisible beliefs, never truly living to please something that doesn't exist. I'm honestly terrified of that. Who am I to blame one day if they were wrong? I won't be able to blame anyone because it'll be too late. That doesn't seem like a way to live life. It's already too late for me to have a childhood. I just hope someone can ease my fears until I can afford to talk to a professional, so I'll keep my DMs open for any advice despite seeing a few comments calling me and the band cowards for not doing the walkout. It hurts to see comments saying that we gave hope for future generations of Christianity because Christianity is my parents' reason for never giving me a childhood. I'm done with Christianity because of that fear. I don't have enough substantial evidence to base my life on a what-if invisible God, and I'm already 17 having barely lived at all. I want to go to college, live a little, sometimes drink and date someone not in church because it's my last chance before 9-5 working for the rest of my life, but I can't do that with constant guilt from purity and everything else extreme Christians try to guilt you with. Many thought I was passionate about Christianity from my last posts. But to be honest, I've hated Christianity long before this mess as a result of my distaste for homeschooling. It just felt good to be able to stick it to the church with the band's walkout idea and eventual post, using their scriptures against them for a change. But by no means am I passionate about Christianity when so many people use it to control lives like mine through homeschooling, and I hate that I know so much of the Bible too. And when you add how hateful and politically infused it has become in recent years, I want nothing to do with it because I don't want to be associated with it. Am I the asshole for hiding my boyfriend's anime body pillow while my parents were visiting? Original post. My boyfriend, M32, and I, F27, have been together for a year. He's only met my parents once over the holidays last year because they live pretty far away. They've been visiting this past week, and since he and I just moved in together, they were excited to see our new place and get to know my BF a little more. We have an extra bedroom and this has become my boyfriend's gaming room for the most part, but we agreed when guests come over it would be a second bedroom. He really likes video games and anime in particular, so he has a lot of toys and artwork that he's collected over the years from different games and such. One thing he has is this anime body pillow that features a sexy anime girl on it. He also has a mousepad for his gaming computer that resembles a busty anime girl. Before my parents came over, I asked him to take down his toys and stuff so they could be comfortable. I was upset to see that he left the body pillow and the mousepad in place. I don't really feel comfortable with either item, but he's really into anime, so I've always kind of left it alone. But I absolutely didn't think it was appropriate to leave it there when my parents would be staying over. I took the cover off the body pillow and put the pillow in the closet, and I put the mousepad in a drawer in our room. When my parents arrived and we showed them to their room, my BF noticed the missing pillow and mousepad. Later, when we were in bed, he brought it up to me and asked why I hid them. I told him I didn't think my parents would feel comfortable with those things in the bedroom, and when they leave we can put them back. My BF got really upset. He told me that he feels like I'm ashamed of his interest in anime. He said he spent his whole life feeling like people think he's weird for being into anime, and he didn't expect his own GF to be just like everyone else. The next day I noticed him taking some of his manga books off our bookshelf and putting them into a box. I asked him why, and he said something like, "I'm putting them away so you don't have to look at them anymore." I feel really bad. I feel like I hurt him, but I just really didn't think my parents would feel comfortable sleeping in a room with those items. But now he's just acting so distant and cold, and he's not really engaging with my parents at all. They keep asking me what's wrong and I don't know what to say. AIT? Top comment. Talking mice. There's a huge difference between anime video game decorations and sexualized anime content. A busty mousepad and a sexy body pillow would most definitely make anyone feel uncomfortable. I get that it's his space too, but I think a small amount of compromise for a limited time isn't a problem at all. He might see it as you being embarrassed of his interests, but the reality is most people aren't comfortable with sexualized decor. It's not about anime at all. NTA, he really needs to have more consideration for others. OOP. That's exactly my feelings too. There's other stuff in the room that's anime gaming related that was left up, but it was more the sexual stuff I didn't feel comfortable leaving out for my parents. OOP is voted NTA update. Edit, thank you for all of the responses. And sorry it took me a few days to update. I was waiting for my parents to leave so I could talk to my boyfriend about all of this. I read through the comments and it kind of validated something I already was feeling. Sexual decor aside, the way he acted the next day when he was putting the books away really bothered me. I ended up explaining the situation to my parents and they weren't exactly thrilled by his reaction either. I got the feeling after this trip that they don't really approve of him. Which is neither here nor there. I'm 27 and I'm old enough to make my own choices. But above everything else, my parents mean a lot to me. I never get to see them, and it was important to me that my BF would be present and treat them well while they were here. After they left, I drove them to the airport. BF refused to come. I came back from the airport and found a couple trash bags outside the door. Turns out that once I left, my BF started throwing all of his anime things into these bags. I asked why and he said something along the same lines as before, that clearly his interests weren't welcome in my home and he'd keep them in his car until he figured out what to do with them. I kinda snapped. I'd been keeping it together all week for my parents, but I had enough at this point. I told him I never asked him to get rid of his anime stuff, just that it wasn't appropriate for my parents while they were staying with us. I told him this reaction is unfair and he's being manipulative. I told him that this week was supposed to be about him getting to know my parents, but he was too fixated on this anime issue to even spend any real time with them. He then called me manipulative for making him believe that I was cool with his love for anime for the past year when I was clearly ashamed of it. He also said he didn't want to be a part of a family that doesn't appreciate anime. We went back and forth for a while and then I told him we needed space. I wasn't even really planning that, but it came out and it felt like the right thing for me. Well, he then started crying a lot and apologizing and immediately tried to take back what he said, but I was just done at this point. He left eventually and now I'm here in this apartment alone. Well, and the mouse pad and body pillow, lol. He left those behind. Anyway. I don't really know if we're broken up officially or what, but it seems to be heading that way. I'm just feeling awful and I almost wish this all happened before my parents visited because I feel like it tainted the whole trip. But yeah. Thanks for the replies guys and for helping me open my eyes a bit. Editor's note, I couldn't decide if this one was concluded or ongoing. I've marked it as ongoing for now, but if people disagree I can change it. After discovering my husband's affair with my best friend, I face loss, divorce, and find new love in a lifelong friendship. Original post, June 5, 2023. OOP and her husband had been together since she was 19 and he was 22. Married for 6 years now with 2 kids, third baby on the way. She found out her dad has cancer. Her mother passed away when she was 12. OOP's husband has been very supportive from day one and suggested that she step away from her job for a while to take care of her family. OOP has her best friend who she knew since they were babies. Both families grew up together. After going to wake her husband up, she discovered her friend's text messages to him from his phone. Realizing it has been going on for 4 months when OOP's husband and her best friend have been lying to her. She tries to figure out what to do next that she knows now about the affair. Update 1. June 5, 2023, same day, 14 hours later. OOP spent a good amount of time gathering and documenting everything she has on her husband and her best friend. Used her dad's hospice care plan as a front cover so her husband doesn't know she knew about his infidelity. She is thinking about going back to work, but working with a lawyer first to get things in order should she move forward with the next steps of her life. Per her lawyer, OOP doesn't have to worry about her inheritance from her parents, which her husband cannot touch at all. While her husband was at work, OOP revealed what took place between her husband and best friend to their mothers, who are now upset about the whole incident. Met with the lawyer, OOP gets her finances, logistics, and everything in order to make sure she is in a good position to go after her husband and best friend. Update 2. June 6, 2023, 1 day later. OOP names the characters in the posts. MIL and File, Ruth and Joe. EXBFF's parents, Angie and Bob. XBFF, Jess/STBX, Tyler. XBFF's brother, Jake. OOP's dad. Dad. OOP provides a quick summary on how things went so quickly in the last couple posts. She was able to meet with her OBGYN on the same day to get checked, all clear. Several more tests were done and waiting for the results to arrive. OOP met with her lawyer to go over everything, including her husband's financial records, which she got a hold of to make sure her bases are covered. If everything goes well with what she got, OOP should not have any problems with getting the divorce papers within a month. Ruth and Angie, MIL and ex-BFF's mothers, told OOP what happened after both sets of parents confronted Tyler, EX, and Jess, EX-BFF. All four parents are very upset with both Tyler and Jess for the affair, and they have been cut off from their families. Tyler discovers OOP has moved her stuff and their children's stuff to her dad's to get away. Damaged the house and went to look for OOP. She left for her dad's cabin with her kids, now away and safe. Tyler is arrested after trying to break into OOP's dad's house, not cabin. OOP had to get her own therapy session and will set up therapy sessions for her children. Per her lawyer, OOP is collecting text messages from Jess, who told her to fix everything, especially her parents cutting her off. Blamed OOP for stealing Tyler from her. Tyler wanted to reconcile, but OOP isn't giving in. He doesn't know about the divorce papers yet until he is served. OOP suspected Tyler and Jess won't be staying together since their parents have confronted them. Jess's brother Jake is on leave from the military. He steps in to help OOP and her family per Angie and Bob. OOP thanks Redditors for continuing support as she deals with the whole situation on Tyler and Jess. Update. 3. June 12, 2023, 6 days later. Tyler finds OOP's post and asks if she is serving him the divorce papers. OOP said yes. He begs for forgiveness for his behavior toward her. OOP has regular meetings with her lawyer to make sure she has everything as needed. Jake is doing great, being a great support system for OOP and her children. OOP's dad is not doing well, now in the hospital for a while. Kids are adjusting well along with therapy already set up to cope with unexpected events in their lives after moving away from Tyler. Still pregnant for a couple more months. Update 4. July 23, 2023, 1 month later. OOP's dad has died. Her marriage ended in dissolution after Tyler was served with the papers. Per her lawyer, the dissolution process was quick and smoothly after Tyler gave OOP everything she asked for in the divorce papers. OOP has full custody of the kids with visitations for Tyler. Therapy is going on for OOP and her kids. Still pregnant, but the baby is doing well. OOP's ex-MIL, Ruth, and ex-BFF's mom Angie are helping her with the kids. All three women are on great terms with each other. Jake has gone back to his active duties but will be back to help OOP and her children. Their friendship is great and might be moving on to the next step, but Jake and OOP are taking things slowly. Tyler and Jess are no longer together. He has left Jess, who has been blacklisted from her family after the blow-up. Update 5, in comments. August 23, 2023, 1 month later. OOP is back with a small update. Her baby boy was born slightly prematurely, but he didn't have to do a NICU stay. Angie, ex-BFF's mom, was present at the birth while Ruth, MIL, stayed with the older children. Both Ruth and Angie took turns staying with OOP for several weeks to assist with the baby and his siblings. OOP is very glad to have support from both mothers. Sadly, the baby doesn't get a chance to get to know his grandpa, OOP's dad, who passed on a few weeks before. Jake is in the process of moving back home after receiving some news on a change in his military career. He has been offered an early retirement, which was not his fault at his base. OOP stated Jake is looking for a place but might stay with her and her children temporarily until he has a place to live in. Tyler, EX, was upset because he wasn't allowed in the room when OOP gave birth. OOP will give more updates on her ex when things calm down. Update 6, October 14, 2023, 2.5 months later. OOP answers prior questions regarding Tyler before giving the latest update. MIL is no contact while FIL is low contact with Tyler when he has supervised visits with the kids. He has cheated on OOP with another girl besides Jess. OOP is not worried about Jess having a sibling relationship with Jake, brother, because they didn't have a great relationship growing up. Jake had been in low contact with Jess prior to the blow-up and has remained the same since then. OOP's oldest child understands the situation with Tyler. Both kids are in therapy per OOP in order to have healthy coping methods with their dad being out. OOP doesn't want to accept any donations from strangers to help out. She has her inheritance from her dad who has passed on. OOP gave a great update on her baby boy who has been reaching all milestones despite the fact being born slightly prematurely. Her oldest children are in love with their baby brother. Angie and Bob, Jess's parents, have been called grandparents, being there for OOP and her children. Tyler wasn't at the birth but has blown up at OOP for not letting him see his child. Per OOP's requests at the hospital where she works as an RN, Tyler was escorted off the property for OOP's own safety. Since then, Tyler hasn't paid any visits to see his children. Turned out he has gotten a new girlfriend and now wasn't interested in seeing his kids after FIL paid a visit to check in with Tyler. OOP has been keeping in touch with Jake, who has been very thoughtful of OOP. Had some food delivered to OOP and catching up. Jake also checked in with OOP's children to make sure they are well. Respected OOP's boundaries. He will be coming home in the next few months to take care of personal business including house hunting. OOP is looking forward to having Jake's visits. What about OOP herself? Therapy has been helpful since she started. Sad about her father's passing. Shared how her relationship with her dad was great. Glad to have Angie and Ruth in her corner along with a large support system. OOP is sad for her children because they don't have their dad in their lives now after Tyler has bailed out on them once he had a new girlfriend. OOP is preparing to head back to work and find a new normal for herself and her children. Ready for a new chapter to start. Update 7, December 25, 2023, 2 months later. OOP shared a short update. She received a surprise for Christmas when Jake came home to visit her and her children. The older children have stated Santa has brought Uncle Jake home. Update 8. February 9, 2024, 1.5 months later. OOP shared some news since the last few updates. Tyler hasn't seen the kids since he started dating his girlfriend. Stopped talked with FIL, who was the middleman for OOP and Tyler for their children's visits. OOP has offered alternative ways of communication for their children's sake. Tyler turned them down because he chose his girlfriend over his children who haven't seen for a while. OOP has figured she was going to be a single mom after Tyler bailed out. Ruth and Angie have provided childcare while OOP adjusts to her work schedule. Very glad to come home to happy children, a clean home, and dinner on the stove. Briefly, OOP was asked if she's religious. She has stated she's not judging people and has encouraged people to be themselves for who they are. OOP shared that she's dating Jake currently. Stating the air quotes because Jake and OOP are taking things slowly. OOP received her first kiss. Went out on several dates here and there, but also included kids for movie nights at home. Things are going well for both. Jake and OOP might enter the boyfriend and girlfriend phase. Jake has been very supportive, helping OOP with her kids including the baby boy. Jake has been very respectful of OOP's boundaries, which makes OOP so glad she has someone who understands her. OOP shared she wanted to wait and receive Jake's stamp of approval on what she shares with the Reddit community. Update 9, May 24, 2024, 3 months later. It has been almost a year since OOP first discovered her ex-husband's affair. OOP shared a quick update on some Redditors who saw Jake's comment on OOP's Reddit account being locked out. Turned out it was Jess who changed the password. OOP explained from the beginning how she found Jess walking into her house while Jake was outside in the backyard with the kids. Jess has tried to make threats against OOP while in the kitchen. Jake managed to get inside after hearing OOP's screams. He got Jess out of the house before the police were called. Jess made up a story to the police and accused OOP for threatening her. It backfired at Jess as OOP had cameras everywhere and showed the police the evidence. Jess was escorted off the property. That was when Jess hacked into OOP's social media accounts including Reddit, but OOP managed to stop Jess from accessing Reddit. Jess later spammed OOP's job, resulting in a week's suspension. OOP was cleared after the evidence showed OOP was telling the truth and Jess was falsifying everything. What led OOP to get a restraining order against Jess was when she tried to pick up OOP's oldest son from school without anyone knowing about it. The school was well aware after meeting with OOP regarding Tyler being violent in front of the kids prior. They escorted Jess off the school campus and kept OOP's oldest safe until OOP came for the pickup. OOP has an emergency order in place, but will be at the court to request for a permanent one within the next month or so. Locks were changed immediately after the incident with Jess and the police. Angie and Bob are very angry with their daughter for what happened. There is no update on Tyler. OOP shares that she hasn't heard from him since he last bailed out on the visitations with their children. OOP realized her oldest has wanted Jake to be the dad instead of Tyler. She knew the kids were moving forward and accepting the fact of Tyler not being in their lives anymore. OOP learns from Ruth and Joe, Tyler's parents, that Tyler has remarried and is expecting a baby with his new wife. Ruth told OOP she and Phil got invitations from Tyler and his wife. That is how OOP learned about Tyler. OOP's 2 children are still in therapy and was informed her oldest is ready to call Jake dad instead of Tyler. Her middle child seems to move on and forget who Tyler was since both children have been bonding well with Jake. Now on to Jake. OOP realized she has been feeling so much happier now when Jake has been around and creating a healthy relationship. It is a blessing for OOP to have Jake there because he checks in regularly when he is at work or anywhere away from OOP and her kids. It showed OOP Jake cares about her and her family. Jake told OOP she is his girlfriend practically the whole time. Update 10. June 26, 2024. 1 month later. OOP is back with a new update. This time, it's on the restraining order she has against Jess. OOP wasn't approved for a permanent one, but did receive a 7-year restraining order. Where she is located, it appears to be very difficult to obtain a permanent restraining order without any additional and hard evidence that could result in a life or death situation. If Jess resumes her harassment onto OOP after 7 years are up, OOP can take her back to the courts for another restraining order. OOP requests no more questions regarding Jess as she is ready to move on after she has the restraining order in place. OOP made an additional comment to confirm her children are also included in the restraining order against Jess, so all good. Per OOP, Jake is doing great, and has moved in with OOP and her children. They are all thrilled with the next step, OOP again stating the fact she has known Jake all her life so she's not worried. There's nothing new with Tyler since he has made no contacts with his children. The children are doing well. Part 1 of 2 updates. September 10, 2024. If you are triggered by mentions of death and drug use, you should probably skip this update. I will be making an entirely different post for the life updates so you won't miss anything. Please take care of your mental health first. Hey guys, I have some news. I'm not entirely sure on how to say it, so I'm just going to say it. Jess was found deceased in her apartment from a drug overdose at the end of July. To say it was a shock would be an understatement of the century. Jess was the kind of girl who never touched a drug in her life. Even back in the day when I would partake in smoking weed from time to time, she would pick a fight with me about it. A part of me is devastated. She was my best friend and we went through so much together, we had so much history. She wrote me a letter. I'm not going to go into every single detail about it, but I will highlight one main part of it. She told me she saw I was trapped in an unhappy loveless marriage and she wanted to help me get out of it. She didn't know what to do, so one night when she started doing drugs she decided to get rid of Tyler. The only way she knew how was by sleeping with him. From there things spiraled and she fell in love with him, and became jealous because he would fill her head with pretty white lies and then go home to me. While I don't forgive her for what she did to me, I get it. I do. Jake has been blaming himself of sorts. Yes, he was pissed at her, but he didn't want her dead. None of us did. He's been having a hard time with things, but in true Jake fashion he's been shoving his grief to the side to be there for everyone else. He stayed with his parents the first month after everything happened to take care of them, and then would come check on me at least twice a day. He still won't really talk about it, so I try to be there for him in every way possible without the use of words. Angie isn't doing well. She lost a child, and even though she cut her off, that's still her daughter and she still loves her. I've been stopping by their house once a day to check on her and bring her meals to ensure everyone is eating. Jake's dad. Well, he's been handling it much better than I thought. Jess was always closer to him, but he told me, maybe I'm a heartless bastard, but once I saw the woman she was becoming I stopped thinking of her as my daughter. I already grieved the loss of my daughter a long time ago. So there's that. Just to put it out there, nobody is blaming me. They made the choice to cut Jess out of their life of their own free will, and I made it clear to them when all of this first came out that I wouldn't blame them if they wanted to keep their relationship with their daughter-sister. Angie even made it a point to tell me it's not my fault, and we hugged and cried together. We're not sure if she did it on purpose or if she had letters for everyone as a backup in case she happened to overdose, but the letters weren't out in the open by her body. They were tucked away in a drawer. To end this update, I just want to make it clear that though I had a lot of hate in my heart for Jess, there was also a lot of love there too. She hurt me and betrayed me, but had she not done that I would still be stuck married to a man I felt indifference towards and would not be as happy as I am. She did it in a fucked up way, but in a sense she did free me from my shackles. I will always love her, and this loss is one that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Relevant comments. OOP on how Jess's parents and brother, Angie and Bob, and Jake are taking the news of her death. OOP. Angie and her husband are in grief counseling, but it's not something Jake is interested in. I did try to push him on it, but he said he'd rather deal with the loss in his own way. I've been respecting that choice, but I do bring it up to him from time to time to ensure no one will think any less of him if he needs help processing. I did manage to get him to attend one of my therapy sessions with me about the grief, and he did get some things off his chest, but he'd rather handle his grief quietly, so I haven't been too overbearing about it. What has OOP know so far about Jess getting into drugs? OOP, personally, I don't think Jess started doing drugs until after the affair was discovered. I think that's what triggered her into finding this new escape. I'd like to believe I would have noticed something that big, but I was also so wrapped in grief over losing my only remaining parent that maybe I did miss some signs. I know without a doubt I would have noticed if she was high around me though, so if it was pre-discovery she didn't do them around me or hang out with me if she was high. OOP on if Tyler has known what happened or not. OOP, if Tyler knows, he didn't say anything to me about it. I also didn't reach out to him and freely offer the information. I really hate to say this, but her obsession with Tyler ran much deeper than I initially realized. I thought it was just a fling, but after going through her apartment and helping Angie and Jake clear it out, I realized that what she felt for him was really walking the line of obsession. There's a part of me that feels like this was her cry to him, to see if he would run back to her and rescue her from herself. OOP's thoughts on if Jess had always wanted what OOP had. Being jealous of OOP in her life. OOP. I think you're pretty close, and this is me making an educational guess because only Jess truly knows, but I like to think I know her well enough to answer this. Had Jess and I fallen out any other way, her parents wouldn't have cut me off unless I did to her what she did to me. They would have distanced from me, and helped Jess through it. This is the first time they made this decision. We've had our fair share of arguments and her parents would take her side, even if she was wrong. Jess was very close to her dad, and while he was like a dad to me as well, we didn't really have that father-daughter bond. Angie always looked after me because my mom was her best friend, and she did mother-daughter things with me since I lost mine so young. But she did more with her own daughter than me, which I never felt ill will towards. Jess and Angie were also close, and Angie always made sure Jess never felt unloved or left out. And Jess even made comments over the years that she was glad that her mom stepped in for me, but never overstepped. They had countless talks about it to the point Jess would come to me and joke about it, saying, "Mom's having one of her moments where she wants to make sure I'm not jealous or upset that she did this and this with you, lol." Her and Jake were never close growing up. More so because all of Jess's friends used her to get closer to Jake, though I'm the first friend of Jess's that Jake actually made a move on. He would ignore the friends and Jess would blame him for it. I'm going to try to word this as gently as possible without trying to sound like a complete asshole. Jess was always boy crazy, the girl who was constantly vying for a man's attention. While I don't think there's anything wrong with that, there is something wrong in how Jess went about it. She saw men as a way to prove her worth. However, teenage boys and even men can be pretty shallow, and the men Jess typically went after were pretty shallow. Jess was always bigger. I wouldn't say she was full out fat, but she had a belly and hips, and I didn't stay over 100 pounds until I had my first child, and even then I was still skinny. So of course, these shallow-ass men, when they saw her and I together, they would divert their attention to me instead of her. I of course always ignored them, but I think that had set a deep-rooted insecurity in her, that she was always second best to me when it came to men. I never saw it that way, and I never went after the men she liked. I married Tyler, and shortly after I married Tyler, Jess got married to the guy I had a crush on in high school. I truthfully didn't care because it was an innocent crush and I never acted on it. But the guy was an ass, and in his wedding speech made a comment about how he got second best to what he really wanted, and everyone hated the guy. All of us begged her to not marry him once he showed his true colors long before that wedding speech. But she saw it as me being jealous, and we actually stopped talking for a while because of it. So I think getting my husband to sleep with her was her way of proving she wasn't second best. Only when my husband didn't pursue a relationship with her like she hoped, she became obsessed with the idea of him and trying to prove she was the better lover. I don't know what the end goal was truthfully, but I just hope she's at peace now. Part 2 of 2. Updates, September 10th, 2024, same day, 1 hour later. Hey guys, I know the last post was heavy, so if you need someone to talk to, please feel free to reach out. I understand stuff like that leaves its mark. Here's to a more cheerful update. Tyler is still MIA from the kid's life. Still hasn't reached out, and I'm not chasing after him to be involved with the kids. They deserve more from their dad. The kids are doing just wonderful. They've really taken to Jake, even the baby calls him Dada, and once he and I had a long talk about it, I've decided that if the kids want to call him Dad, I won't intervene. My oldest made the transition from Uncle Jake to Dad. My middle child still calls him Uncle Jake, but that's completely fine with me. How they want to pursue that relationship, I will let them. Jake actually started coaching their indoor soccer league and they love having him there. The house just has this sense of peace now, and all of them are just so happy that it makes my heart so full. I did have a conversation with them about Aunt Jess being in heaven with Papa, and they took it well, probably because they've hardly seen her in the last year. Tyler's parents have still been just as involved and are actually really close to Jake's parents. They've all been so wonderful that sometimes I feel like I'm dreaming. Angie, and I think the fake name I assigned Angie's husband was Bob, please bear with me if I'm wrong. Bob has retreated a little from the kids' life to deal with their grief, which I completely understand. They do still see the kids at least once a week, and Angie mentioned it helps her, spending time with them. Roughly 2 weeks after Jess passed away, Jake asked me to marry him. I told him I wasn't saying no, but I wanted him to sit with this a little longer and make sure this was something he actually wanted and he wasn't making a hasty decision in the midst of grief. A month later, after the dust had started to settle and things were slowly falling back into our routines, he asked me again. He had this whole speech about how he's wanted this for as long as he could remember, and even mentioned how when we were kids he said he would marry me when we grew up. It's true, he did say that to me when I was like 5 lol, so I said yes. We are having a long engagement. I don't want to jump right back into a marriage, so we're taking our time and haven't even started wedding planning yet. Maybe come 2025 we'll start the plans. To be totally honest though, we've just been debating on an elopement, something small with just his parents and the kids. Who knows though, we have time to figure it out. Life has been a whirlwind full of ups and downs, but I'm so lucky to have so many wonderful people who love me and my kids. As always, thank you for being here with me throughout this journey. I love you guys. Until next time. Relevant comments. OOP on how Angie and Bob are taking the news of her engagement. OOP, Angie is very thrilled. She's actually been doing some wedding planning, and I've been letting her do her own thing. I think it's helping keep her busy. When we told Angie and Bob, Angie actually started crying. She said that her and my mom used to joke about us growing up and getting married, and they were thrilled about the idea of them becoming actually related by marriage. Bob is happy because he knows Jake is a good man who would, in his words, take care of you and the kids, and if he did anything to hurt me, all I needed to do was call him and he'd put the fear of God in Jake, lol. After confronting my husband's friend about pressuring his sick fiancé into having kids, I question if I overstepped or just told the truth. Original post, September 7, 2024. Obligatory throwaway, my 32F husband, 36M, has a high school friend, 36M. Let's call him John. John is a typical jock, athletic, good-looking, popular with girls. But I've been around enough to see and hear him being questionable towards women. To the story, we were in a group of friends and I was introducing them to my new baby, 0F. Important info. I had a miserable pregnancy. The topic of having kids came up and John started saying how he and his fiancée, 32F, would be the next. More important information. His fiancée Janet is an amazing lady. Kind, smart, gentle. Recently she has been through a lot, lost her dad and her health has been terrible. Not going to say what, but she has a disease that causes headaches, weakness, dizzy spells, fainting, extreme fatigue. She has become more and more emotionally and physically dependent on him. On top of that, she, and I, come from another country. It means her family and support system are not here. Back to the situation. I asked her if they plan to have kids after the wedding, that is in 2 years. I thought that because it gives her time to recover. He doesn't let her answer and say they agreed they would only get married after having kids. I am surprised for 2 reasons. She always said she wanted kids after marriage and her health is not good. She doesn't say anything, but looks sad. I argue that it doesn't seem like a good plan, and that a pregnancy now could put her health at risk. He said her fertility window is almost closing and that is now or never. I start getting angry, and we discuss. I ended up saying he is selfish and this decision is only based on his wants and needs and is hurting her. Basically a form of abuse. The room got quiet and we ended up leaving. My husband later agreed with me, but said it was not my place to say anything. Our friends are mixed, saying someone had to say it, but that I was too harsh. I feel maybe was not my place and I was being a busybody, but after being through a hard pregnancy myself, without my family, I know how hard it is. And my husband is a great supportive guy. Meanwhile, John leaves her alone all the time to party and enjoy life. He is dooming someone that trusts him blindly into a horrible situation. Aita? Relevant comments. Commenter. What you said was the truth, but you were a little harsh. I think you were right to say it because the guy obviously doesn't care how he treats his wife. I also think you should ask * his fiancée in private how she feels about her situation. OOP. I agree that I came out too strong. I feel protective towards her. She is so sweet and nice. I feel she doesn't deserve the way he treats her. But when I say something in private, she keeps repeating that she loves her and she never met a man like him. I feel she thinks that he is out of her league or something. Commenter. Honestly, I think he knows what he's doing. There's a reason he won't legally commit to her until after she has children, and it's not a kind or responsible reason. So I don't think he's going to care about what you said or the potential health outcomes for your friend. It may be satisfying to call him out, but is it going to change his mind? OP, I also found this part extra strange. The first time we met she literally said how her dream was to have a wedding and then kids. She even repeated that recently. She comes from a Catholic upbringing, like me. It doesn't seem like a thing you change your mind about easily. Commenter. Except his wife. In this conversation fight both you and John are treating his wife as if she's a child that can't make decisions for herself. He is talking over her but you are also making assumptions about their decisions based on her looking sad. OOP, I admit I should have talked to her first. But we just had a conversation about her health and she was telling me how some days she can barely make it out of bed. His smugness made me so angry, as if he knows what is best and no one can question him. Commenter. Honestly, I would be pissed if someone started talking and arguing about my health issues in public. I'm a really private person. Does the rest of the group know about her health issues? You didn't speak to her, but made assumptions. She might not confide in you anymore. He might be an asshole, but she is an adult and you could have made it worse for her. I had 2 awful pregnancies and was alone without family around, but my husband is amazing as well. I get where you are coming from, but seriously be more aware next time and show your friends some respect. And don't talk about people's medical history in front of people, obviously not your friend. OP, I see your point. The group started with some people that studied together and expanded with their SO. We meet often and are friendly. When she got sick, we took turns visiting, checking up on her when she was alone for a reason or another. Everyone seems to try to be her support system, but seem afraid to say anything to John. Commenter. He probably does and just doesn't care. John is aware that his wife isn't in a good place for kids. If he and OP's husband are such great friends, why didn't he say anything? Call out your friend's shitty behavior, people. OOP, my husband is great, but everyone jokes he has a man crush on John. He was John's sidekick in school and doesn't listen when I point out some comments John makes. OOP is voted NTA but opinions are mixed. Update, September 10, 2024, 3 days later. Thank you for all the answers. I was blown away by all the perspectives and was able to see further into the situation. I reached out to Janet and invited her for a coffee. We usually talk with more people around, so this was the first time we were alone. I started by apologizing. I said I should not have said all these things in front of everyone and acted as if she cannot speak for herself. She said she was initially embarrassed, but after further thought she started questioning if it was really a good idea to have kids now and has scheduled a talk with a specialist. She said John doesn't know, and she wants to have more information before talking to him. She also said he was furious afterwards and they had a terrible fight. So you guys were right, it was not the right move, and he did blame her, saying she should have defended their position and that she knew having kids was a must for him. He also said that a woman would only be a real woman if she gave her man biological children. She asked him what if she could not, and apparently he never answered. It seems more has happened in the fight, but I decided not to pressure her and let her tell me what she was comfortable with. Lastly, she decided to take some time off and go home to her mom, and I think it is a great idea. The saddest for me was that she cried saying someone like her would never get a man like him, and that she was scared of losing him. That it was like she found a golden ticket. I held my tongue, because I personally do not think he is a prize. But again I took the advice and did not pressure further. I also had a long talk with my husband, and we are at odds. He still thinks I am overreacting and that John poops gold. I am frustrated, but not much I can do for now. Not a fantastic update, but it has only been a few days, so I will let you know if there is anything big happening. Am I the asshole for being disappointed when my boyfriend did not give me the first slice of cake? Original post, September 8, 2024. Why, 20F, AM from Brazil, and here it is tradition that in a birthday party the person whose birthday is being celebrated gives the first slice of cake to their favorite person after everyone sings the birthday song. This week was my boyfriend's, 24M, and he had 3 celebrations, one with his birth family, one with his adoptive family, and one with friends, which was a surprise picnic that I planned and organized. He has had a very difficult life and his moms are really important to him, as the adoptive mom saved him from starving as a kid and raised him, giving him a chance at life, and his birth mom battled very hard against poverty all her life, struggling and fighting to keep her kids alive and well. So of course I never expect him to give me the first slice of cake at the family celebrations. But then there was the picnic. I spent weeks planning and reaching out to all his childhood friends, making sure they would come. I went to bed at 2 a.m. the night before making him his favorite cake. I spent a shit ton of money with food, drinks and gifts. I didn't do it because of the first slice of course, but at all times I couldn't help but think, now is my turn. Turns out it was not. He has a best friend of many years, she and him are like brother and sister, they went through a lot of shit together. Like her losing her mom, him not having food to eat at home as a teen. And even though they are so close, they don't get the chance to see each other very often now as they both are very busy with life and all its shit. So of course he took the chance to show her some appreciation. She was so happy and, of course I understood the situation, he sees me every day and has the chance to honor me almost daily. He always makes me feel really loved and all, and he can't do that with her. Also, I understand he wanted to show her that him having a relationship does not mean she is not his sister anymore, a priority in that sense. I am not jealous, because I know there is nothing romantic between them. She is pretty gay and polygamous, he is the most monogamous guy in the world and he worships me. But I couldn't help but at least feel a bit, I don't know, do I need to explain? Maybe disappointed, maybe unappreciated. I feel like I can never be the most important person in the room. We always talk about getting married, we are each other's life and still, get me? And also, he did this in front of everyone. In front of all our mutual friends who don't really know her and all she means to him, so I also felt kind of embarrassed. I am just venting. I want to go home and cry a bit. I know I am being childish, but I guess I will keep it that way for now. Update September 8, 2024, 6 hours later. My boyfriend did not give me the first slice of cake. Update. Hi everyone, thank you for all the kind comments. Me and my boyfriend have very different energy spans, so I usually leave hangouts a lot earlier than him, which is what happened today. So I left, posted the story on Reddit, took a shower and started to paint my nails. About 3 hours after I left, my boyfriend called me. I picked him up and he was sobbing. Notice he does not have Reddit and he does not speak English, so he didn't know about the post, and I had not talked about my feelings with him yet. So he calls me absolutely pouring, saying he was going home and he has had the best day of his life. That he loves me so much for doing this for him, and spends the next 15 minutes talking between sobs about all the effort I put into the birthday celebration, thanking me for every single one of the things I did. Then he mentioned the cake slice. He said to me that throughout his entire life, because he has always had birthdays in his mom's houses, he had never given a first slice to his best friend, who went through all that with him, and that me being empathetic enough to let him do this was honestly one of the most special things I had ever done for him. He told me she had been going through some very important stuff and he was not around ever because of work and college, and she was feeling very left behind because of this, which is a huge thing since they are basically brother and sister. So the cake made her cry so much, it was the first time he had ever done this and she finally felt like he had not forgotten about her. And then, because I made that much effort for him, he asked me to rest. He told me that this next week was going to be entirely for him to show me appreciation. He asked me to please for once not sabotage him showing me love and pampering me because I feel like I don't deserve it. Because he was going to take his savings to take me out and spend the week giving me surprises. I know him well enough to expect some love notes, him showing up to surprise me at my place, maybe even a song written for me. He also invited me to spend the weekend at his place, just the two of us. He lives with his family and they are all going to the beach, leaving the house empty. So that he can cook me dinner and give me one of his 1-hour-long full-body massages, They are my favorites. Then, after he said all that, I took the opportunity to tell him about how I felt today. He listened quietly, and when I was finished, he apologized, saying that he did not realize that was how I felt, that was not his intention. He just thought that did not mean as much to me as it would have meant for his best friend, so he decided to honor her that way and then honor me differently. With my Princess Week. But he told me he understood how I felt and that he was sorry anyway. We talked a bit more, but we got over the stuff pretty quickly and it all ended with us gossiping about the day, because two friends of ours who don't really get along very well apparently went back home together and half drunk after I left. Man, I love gossip. Well friends, I suppose that's my update. Maybe this is the day Reddit realizes that emotions are complicated and life is too, which is why small moments do not define a relationship or someone's feelings. How we react to the situation and deal with it does. I love my boyfriend, and he loves me a lot too, and that does not mean he does not have any family beyond me. That also does not mean I'm not allowed to feel sad. I have the right to feel what I feel and to be welcomed in that feeling, being validated. I will marry this man, mark my words.